Greetings, Lore Masters! Tonight our chronicle covers a figure who has likely greeted you 1,000 times. A friendly face amidst the harsh winds of the tundra, whose pleasant demeanour hides a labyrinth of ambition, loneliness, and morally grey survival tactics. We are heading to Whiterun, to peel back the layers of Ysolda, the aspiring merchant whose life is far more tragic and complex than her simple requests for a Mammoth Tusk would suggest. Imagine the plains of Whiterun at twilight. The twin moons, Massa and Secunda, are just starting to bleed through the violet sky, casting long, bruised shadows over the golden grass. The air smells of wood smoke, wet fur, and the metallic tang of snow carried on the wind from the throat of the world. You can hear the distant rumble of a giant herding his mammoths, a sound that vibrates in your chest like a low-frequency hum. It's peaceful in that terrifying prehistoric way that only Skyrim can achieve. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to Cold Harbour without some serious enchanted gear, but even a walk to the market in Whiterun can feel like a gamble with your life if a dragon decides to crash the party. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of Nirn. I always love seeing the Global Guild assemble in the chat. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind in the Cloud District cuts differently than it does in the plains. It is sharper, laden with the judgment of the Jarl's court and the icy breath of the mountains. But down in the market the wind is just tired. It whips around the stone pillars, rattling the wooden signs of the drunken huntsman, and stealing the warmth from the braziers that struggle to stay lit. Here, in the muddy, well-trodden circle of the Plains District stands Ysolda. If you have spent any time in Whiterun, and let's face it, we all treat Whiterun like the unofficial capital of our playthroughs, you know her voice. It is warm, inviting, almost jarringly pleasant compared to the gruff barks of the city guards, or the relentless lung-busting proselytizing of Heimska just a few yards away. "It's a fine day with you around," she says. It is a line that has launched 1,000 memes and charmed 1,000,000 Dragonborns. But tonight, we aren't looking at Ysolda the NPC. We are looking at Ysolda the woman. And the first sad truth of her existence is that this pleasantness is a construct. It is a calculated, exhausting facade worn by a woman desperate to carve out a space in a world that has no room for her. Ysolda does not own a stall. This is a core in-game fact that is easy to overlook because she is so omnipresent in the market. Unlike Carlotta Valentia, who has her vegetables, or Fralia Greymane with her jewellery, or the abrasive Honoriath with his questionable meat, Ysolda has nothing. She stands in the thoroughfare, exposed to the elements, clutching her arms against the chill, watching commerce happen around her. She is a floater, an economic ghost haunting the marketplace. Every smile she offers you, every casual conversation about the Khajiit caravans is a marketing pitch for a business that doesn't effectively exist yet. She is the medieval fantasy equivalent of that friend from high school who messages you out of nowhere to sell you essential oils, except her desperation is driven by the very real threat of starvation or irrelevance in a brutal feudal society. Think about the psychological toll of that specific routine. Every morning, she wakes up in her small, modest house, which we will visit later, dresses in her finest clothes, and walks out to stand in the mud. She has to project success to attract success. In a province where strength is measured by the size of your axe or the potency of your thuum, Ysolda is trying to survive on charisma alone, and charisma is a depreciating asset when dragons are burning down watchtowers. There is a tragic unspoken law here regarding the economy of Skyrim. While the game simplifies things into gold coins and inventory slots, the reality of a civil war economy is devastating. Imports are stifled by the Stormcloaks. The Empire is taxing heavily. Bandits roam the roads, making supply chains a nightmare. Ysolda is trying to break into the merchant class at the absolute worst possible historical moment. Her cheerful demeanour acts as a shield. If she frowns, if she looks worried, if she admits that she doesn't know where her next septum is coming from, the sharks, like the sleazy Belethor, will smell blood. Speaking of the community, there is a long-standing fan theory and debate that suggests Isolda's pleasantness is actually a sign of sociopathy. Players have pointed out how quickly she moves into the Bannered Mare if anything unfortunate were to happen to Hulda, the innkeeper. They argue that her dialogue never changes, her tone never shifts, implying a detachment from the suffering around her. While that's a fun, dark interpretation, the sadder truth is likely that she simply cannot afford to care. Empathy is expensive. When the Dragonborn sprints past her, clad in Daedric armour and smelling of ozone and dried blood, she doesn't cringe. She smiles. She compliments. She ignores the horror of what you represent, a walking avatar of death because you are a potential investor. She is trapped in the role of the friendly townsperson, while her internal world is likely screaming. Imagine standing near the Gildergleam for 12 hours a day. Your feet ache in thin boots. The smoke from the forge at Warmaiden stings your eyes. You have to listen to Nazim belittle the market vendors every single time he passes by on his way to the Cloud District, and you cannot say a word back to him because he is a political power player and you are nobody. You have to listen to Heimska screaming about Talos until your ears ring, a constant looping soundtrack of religious zealotry that would drive a monk to madness. Yet, Ysolda stands there. She clasps her hands. She nods. She offers that practiced line, "I've got a little money. I've been saving." It is a heartbreaking display of resilience. She is an adventurer of the mundane. While you're out fighting Draugr Deathlords, she is fighting the crushing weight of mediocrity and the terrifying prospect that she might never be anything more than a girl standing in the dirt, watching other people sell apples. She's watching the flow of gold, analysing the market, looking for an angle, any angle, to escape the cold. This facade extends to her interactions with the other market vendors. They have their designated spots, they have their licenses. Ysolda is essentially loitering with intent. There is likely a silent tension there, a side-eye from Carlotta or a grunt from Yungel War Anvil. They know she wants in. They know she is hungry, and in a walled city like Whiterun, resources are finite. If Ysolda rises, someone else might have to fall. She's the hungry wolf in sheep's clothing, but the sheep's clothing is a patched blue dress, and a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes when the snow starts to fall. Consider the physical reality of Whiterun's market. It is the heart of the hold, but it is also a meat grinder. Travellers come in dusty, bloody and broke. Beggars like Brenuin are just a few feet away, a constant reminder of where Ysolda could end up if her schemes fail. She walks a tightrope between the gutter and the Cloud District. Her pleasantness is her armour, her only defence against the entropy of the world. She cannot swing a sword, she cannot cast a fireball, so she smiles. She smiles until her jaw aches, hoping that one day the right person will stop, listen, and offer her the keys to the kingdom she so desperately craves. But what exactly is that kingdom? It isn't a throne or a castle. It's a warm fire, a counter to wipe down and a ledger to balance. Her ambition is painfully domestic, yet it consumes her entirely. She doesn't want to save the world. She just wants to own the room where the world comes to drink. And this obsession, this singular focus on the Bannered Mare, is where her story begins to take a darker, more obsessive turn. She isn't just standing in the market for her health. She is staring at the indoors like a hawk watching a mouse hole, waiting for her moment to strike regardless of the cost. Step out of the biting wind and push open the heavy double doors of the Bannered Mare. The transition is instant and sensory. The cold blue-grey palette of the exterior world is replaced by a suffocatingly warm spectrum of oranges and browns. The air is thick, almost chewable, composed of wood smoke, roasting goat legs, spilled mead, and the sweat of a dozen tired farmhands. It is the womb of Whiterun, the city's living room, and for Ysolda, it is the only place in the world that matters. If you observe her patrol patterns, yes, let's call them that, because NPCs are creatures of habit, you will notice that whenever she isn't shivering in the market, she is here. She isn't just patronising the establishment, she is haunting it. She sits at the tables, not necessarily to drink, but to be present. This brings us to a well-known core in-game fact that defines her entire character arc. Ysolda explicitly tells the Dragonborn with a mixture of pride and anxiety, "I'm saving money to buy the Bannered Mare from Hulda one day." To the casual player, this is just flavour text, a bit of background noise to flesh out the world. But look closer at the implications. This isn't just a job application. It is an obsession that borders on pathology. Most young Nords in Skyrim dream of glory. They dream of joining the companions, fighting for the Stormcloaks, or mastering the arcane arts at the College of Winterhold. They want to see the world, to bleed on it, to conquer it. Ysolda dreams of walls. She dreams of a roof. She dreams of never having to leave this one specific room for the rest of her life. There is a profound, quiet sadness in that ambition. It suggests a deep-seated need for safety and control that a young woman shouldn't necessarily prioritise over life experience. While other women her age, like Uthgerd the Unbroken, before her fall from grace, or the shield maidens of the Jarl, are out testing their mettle against the wild, Ysolda is mentally arranging tankards. She covets the Bannered Mare not because she loves serving drinks, but because the inn represents the ultimate fortress against the chaos of the Fourth Era. In an inn, the world comes to you. You don't have to risk dragon fire or bandit raids. You sit behind a sturdy oak counter and let the stories, and the gold, walk through the door. This desire puts her in a strange liminal state. She is the owner in waiting, a role that exists only in her head. Watch her as she moves through the room. She studies Hulda. She watches how the older woman wipes down the bar, how she handles the belligerent drunks, how she manages the bard Mikael, who, let's be honest, we've all wanted to punch at least once. Ysolda is an apprentice to a position that isn't vacant. She's rehearsing for a play that hasn't been cast yet. It creates a palpable aura of longing around her. She's a ghost of the future, haunting the present owner. Community discussions often circle around this peculiar fixation. There is a prevalent fan theory, or perhaps more of a spirited debate, regarding Ysolda's actual capability to run the place. Some players argue that Ysolda is a visionary stuck in a novice's role, while others suggest she's delusional, a wantrepreneur who likes the idea of owning the inn but lacks the grit Hulda possesses. Hulda is tough. She has the weariness of someone who has seen everything. Ysolda is soft, diplomatic, perhaps too eager to please. The debate questions whether the Bannered Mare would survive under Ysolda's management, or if it would turn into a soft-focused merchant guild hall, losing that gritty spit and sawdust charm that attracts the mercenaries. But let's dive a bit deeper into the lore of the building itself, the object of her desire. The Bannered Mare isn't just a pub, it is a historical landmark. Obscure lore tidbits hidden in the architectural style and local legends suggest that the central fire pit and the structure of the mare are remnants of the old Nord mead hall traditions, dating back to the earlier settlements around Jorvaska. In a way, the Bannered Mare is the civilian counterpart to the Companions' Hall. While Jorvaska preserves the martial spirit of Ysgramor, the Bannered Mare preserves the social spirit. By aiming to own this specific building, Ysolda isn't just buying a business, she's attempting to buy her way into the historical bedrock of Whiterun. She wants to be a keeper of the culture, even if she isn't a warrior. This context makes her desperation even more poignant. She knows she cannot wield Wuthrad. She knows she cannot shout the sky apart. So, her only path to immortality, to being remembered in the annals of the city, is to have her name on the deed of this building. It is a surrogate for legacy. If she owns the mare, she matters. If she doesn't, she is just another face in the crowd. Consider the sensory details of her obsession. She probably knows the squeak of every floorboard. She knows which table wobbles. She knows that Sardia is terrified of the Alik'r warriors and likely leverages that knowledge, not for malice but to understand the staffing dynamics of her future empire. She's living two lives simultaneously. The reality where she's a poor merchant with a Mammoth Tusk problem, and the fantasy where she is the matron of the mare holding court by the fire. The tragedy lies in the waiting. Life is happening to her while she waits for it to start. Every day she spends sitting on that bench watching Hulda work is a day she isn't actually building anything of her own. She is stagnant, preserved in the amber of her own ambition. The Dragonborn rushes in, saves the world, buys a round of drinks, and leaves. Ysolda stays. The sun sets, the moons rise, the patrons stumble out, and Ysolda is still there, mentally counting coins she doesn't have, fixing furniture she doesn't own. It is also worth noting the social isolation this creates. When you're so focused on a singular goal, everything else becomes a means to an end. Friendships become transactions, romances become distractions. Even her potential marriage to the Dragonborn is often viewed by the community as a strategic acquisition on her part. If you marry her, she opens a shop. Where? In your house. Why? Because she can't have the Bannered Mare yet, so she practices on you. You become the temporary vessel for her merchant dreams. You are the placeholder for the inn. And let's not forget the bard, Mikael. He sings Ragnar the Red for the 10,000th time. Does Ysolda hate it? Does she love it? She probably doesn't even hear it anymore. It's just part of the inventory. Her gaze is fixed on the ledger Hulda keeps behind the counter. That book contains the secrets of the city. Who owes what? Who drinks with whom? Which guards can be bribed with a free flagon of mead? To Ysolda, that ledger is more powerful than an Elder Scroll. It is the book of life for the Plains district. This obsession also hints at a fear of the outside world. Whiterun is central, but it is surrounded by vast empty tundra, giants, and now, dragons. The Bannered Mare is thick-walled and warm. It is safe. Perhaps Ysolda's ambition is driven by a deep, unacknowledged cowardice. She wants to build a fortress of ale and roast meat to hide from the harsh realities of Skyrim. She sees the adventurers come in with frost in their beards and blood on their armour, and she thinks, I never want to be that cold. She wants to be the fire, not the traveller. So the next time you see her sitting there, nursing a tankard she's been holding for 3 hours, don't just see a quest giver. See a woman consumed by a dream that keeps her paralysed in a warm room, watching the dust motes dance in the firelight, waiting for a future that requires someone else to exit the stage before she can enter. It is a waiting game, and Ysolda is playing it with the patience of a predator and the heart of a lonely dreamer. Let's step away from the warm glow of the Bannered Mare's hearth for a moment, and walk back out into the harsh light of day. You approach Ysolda. You ask her what is on her mind. She smiles that practiced disarming smile and drops a request that is so casually phrased it borders on sociopathic. If you could bring me a mammoth tusk, I'd be grateful. It sounds simple, doesn't it? Bring me a mammoth tusk. It has the same cadence as bring me a sweet roll or bring me a bucket of water. But let's pause the game for a second and look at the reality of what she is asking. This isn't a fetch quest. It is a death sentence. The core in-game fact here is undeniable. Ysolda initiates the rare gifts Radiant quest. She needs a single mammoth tusk to barter with the Khajiit caravans, claiming it will help her learn the secrets of their trade. She frames it as a business expense, a necessary token to open negotiations. But consider the biology and the danger rating of the creature she is asking you to dismantle. A mammoth in Skyrim is not a cow. It is a 6-ton shaggy siege engine with tusks the size of a grown Nord. It is a prehistoric tank that shakes the ground when it walks. And, crucially, mammoths are almost never alone. They are the beloved livestock of the giants. We all know the giants. We've all been unwitting participants in the Skyrim space program, where a single strike from a giant's club sends the Dragonborn cartwheeling into the stratosphere, ragdolling over the throat of the world. Ysolda, a woman who rarely leaves the paved circle of the market district, is asking you to go out into the tundra, find a creature protected by a 12-foot-tall demigod with a club made of petrified stone, and kill it. She's effectively saying, "Hey, I need to impress a cat merchant. Go poke a sleeping dragon for me." There is a terrifying disconnect here between her desire and the violence required to fulfill it. Ysolda doesn't see the blood. She doesn't see the mud, the freezing panic of dodging a tusk thrust, or the earth-shattering roar of an angry giant. She only sees the commodity. To her, a mammoth tusk isn't a part of a living, breathing animal. It is a unit of currency. It is a shiny object to be traded for information. This commodification of extreme violence is a hallmark of the merchant mindset she's trying so hard to adopt, but in her case, it feels particularly callous because she stays so clean while you get so dirty. Deep within the obscure lore of the Elder Scrolls, particularly looking at texts regarding the ecology of Skyrim, the bond between giants and mammoths is described as far more than just shepherd and sheep. Giants paint their mammoths. They protect them with a ferocity that suggests a deep, almost familial emotional bond. Some lore scholars suggest that the markings on mammoth tusks, often seen in giant camps, are a form of primitive art or record-keeping for the giants. By demanding a tusk, Ysolda isn't just asking for meat or leather. She is asking you to desecrate a creature that holds cultural significance to the giants. You are a poacher. She is the fence. This brings us to a popular fan theory and community debate that has circulated on forums for years. Is Ysolda actually testing you? Many players view this quest as a gold digger test, or perhaps something more primal. The theory suggests that Ysolda, being a pragmatic survivalist, is looking for a mate or a partner who is physically capable of protecting her. By setting the bar at Mammoth Tusk, she filters out the weak. If a suitor goes out and gets flattened by a giant, well, He wasn't going to be much use to her anyway. If he comes back with the ivory, he is a survivor. He is a resource. It frames Ysolda not as a damsel in need of a favour, but as a ruthless HR manager for her own life. She is conducting a job interview where the practical exam involves fighting a mega fauna. It's cold, it's calculating, and it fits perfectly with her ambition. She doesn't want a bard who can sing about heroes. She wants the hero who can kill the monster and bring home the loot. Think about the sheer weight of the object too. A mammoth tusk in your inventory weighs quite a bit. It's heavy, unwieldy. Lugging that back to Whiterun is a chore. When you finally dump it in her hands, does she ask how you got it? Does she ask if you had to slaughter a giant to get it? Does she ask if you found it on a dead carcass scavenging like a vulture? No. She says, "Thank you. This is exactly what I needed." The provenance of the item is irrelevant to her. The blood on it washes off. The value remains. There is also the question of where else you can get a tusk. Sure, you can find them sitting on shelves in Halted Stream Camp, a bandit stronghold. But that implies you have to clear out a mine full of poachers who can transmute iron to gold. Even the easy route involves mass murder. Ysolda sends you into the jaws of death, whether it be against beasts or bandits, and she does it with a smile. It highlights a grim reality of the adventurer-merchant relationship. We are the violence they outsource. We are the wet work operatives for the shopkeepers. Ysolda sits in the sun dreaming of the Bannered Mare while we are knee-deep in freezing marsh water dodging arrows and clubs, and for what? A single point of favour, a stepping stone to marriage? The reward she gives you is usually a pittance of gold or a skill point boost in speech. She pays you in experience, the classic excuse of employers exploiting interns everywhere. Let's dwell on the Halted Stream Camp connection for a moment, as it adds a layer of grime to Ysolda's request. That camp is the centre of the mammoth poaching trade in Whiterun Hold. By creating a demand for mammoth tusks, Ysolda is indirectly supporting the poaching economy. She is part of the problem. She drives the market price up. If she's willing to pay or trade favours for tusks, then bandits are willing to kill mammoths to supply that market. She might play the innocent maiden, but economically she's a driver of the slaughter. And why a mammoth tusk specifically? Why not a hawker tusk? Hawkers are dangerous, sure, but they aren't protected by giants, and they are plentiful on the coast. The Khajiit, as we will explore later, have a taste for the exotic and the valuable. Ivory from a mammoth is denser, larger, and more prestigious. Ysolda knows her customer. She knows that to impress the caravans, she can't bring them trinkets. She has to bring them the good stuff. She's aiming for the high-end luxury market of illicit goods right from the start. Imagine the conversation she expects to have. She walks up to a Khajiit, let's say Risad, and pulls a massive polished tusk from her bag. It signals that she has connections. It signals that she has power, or at least access to power. It is a bluff. She didn't kill the mammoth. She didn't brave the tundra. She just batted her eyelashes at the Dragonborn. But to the Khajiit, the tusk is real, so the power must be real. She is laundering your strength into her reputation. It creates a strange intimacy between the player and Ysolda, born of violence. You carry the weight of the kill, and she carries the profit of the trade. Every time you see a mammoth wandering the plains, peaceful and majestic against the setting sun, remember that Ysolda looks at that creature and sees a down payment on a business deal. She doesn't see the majesty of nature. She sees inventory walking on 4 legs. This quest is the first crack in the porcelain mask. It shows that her ambition has teeth. It shows that she is willing to endanger others to get what she wants. She stays safe within the walls of Whiterun, protected by the guards and the Jarl, while she sends you out into the wild to harvest parts from the most dangerous game in the province. It is a masterclass in risk management. All the risk is yours, all the reward is hers. So the next time you hand over that tusk, look at her face. Really look at it. Is there concern for your safety? Or is there just the gleam of a transaction successfully completed? She takes the ivory, she gives you a few coins, and she turns back to the market, already calculating her next move. You're left with the bruises, and she's one step closer to owning the inn. It's a sad, bloody truth. To Ysolda, you are just a tool to harvest the world, a weapon to be pointed at whatever stands between her and her dreams. Follow the path of that Mammoth Tusk. It doesn't stay in Ysolda's pocket, it travels. To follow it, we have to leave the relative safety of Whiterun's cobbled streets, pass under the heavy portcullis, nod to the guards who inevitably tell you not to lollygag, and step out into the mud of the exterior plains. There, huddled against the city walls like unwanted children clinging to a mother's skirt, are the Khajiit caravans. This is the setting of Ysolda's most dangerous social gamble. While the rest of the city views the catfolk with deep suspicion, branding them as thieves, smugglers and drug pushers, Ysolda views them as tutors. A core in-game fact that separates her from virtually every other Nord in the hold is her explicit defense of these pariahs. If you ask her about them, she doesn't recoil, she lights up. The Khajiit? I find them fascinating, she says. The Nords don't trust them, so they aren't allowed in the city, but that suits me just fine. I can learn a lot from them. Let's unpack the social suicide inherent in that statement. Whiterun is a city of tradition. It is a city of Nords who worship Talos, quietly or loudly, drink mead, and distrust anything with fur or pointed ears. By associating with the caravans, Ysolda is effectively crossing a picket line. She is hanging out with the wrong crowd. Every time she walks out those gates to do business with Risad or Akari, she's walking a gauntlet of judgment. The guards on the battlements watch her. Commander Caius likely has a file on her. To the stalwart citizens of Whiterun, a young woman sneaking out to the tents implies one of two things. She is buying illicit substances, or she's selling secrets. The atmosphere of the Khajiit camps is starkly different from the Bannered Mare. It is transient, desperate and damp. The tents are patched canvas, the fire is small and smoky. They sit in the rain, their wares spread out on soggy rugs. It smells of wet fur, exotic spices that don't belong in the tundra, and the sweet, sickly scent of moon sugar. Yet, Ysolda prefers this company to the haughty dismissal of the Cloud District. Why? Because out here, she isn't a failure. She isn't the girl who doesn't own a shop. She is a valued business partner. There is a deep, obscure lore connection here regarding the Khajiit culture of commerce that Ysolda is tapping into. The caravans in Skyrim are often associated with the Bandari peddlers, a subculture of Khajiit from elsewhere who live by a code that prioritizes the deal above the law. Their philosophy is that if you are clever enough to steal it, you deserve to keep it, and if you are dumb enough to buy it back, you deserve to pay. Ysolda is immersing herself in a school of economics that is fundamentally alien to the Nord honor system. The Nords believe in fair prices and honest labour. The Khajiit believe in leverage and opportunity. Ysolda is learning to think like a Bandari. She's learning that morality is just another variable in the price tag. This creates a fascinating, invisible wall between her and her kin. When she returns to the market, she carries the scent of the caravan, metaphorically and perhaps literally. She knows things the other merchants don't. She knows what is moving through the black market. She knows which routes are compromised by dragons before the Jarl does. This knowledge is power, but it is also isolating. She can't share these tips with Carlotta or Belethor because to reveal the source is to reveal her complicity. She's hoarding secrets like a dragon hoards gold. Community debates often flare up around the nature of this relationship. A popular fan theory posits that Ysolda isn't just a student. She is the Khajiit's inside man, or rather, inside woman. The theory suggests that since the Khajiit are banned from the city, they need a proxy to move good within the walls. Ysolda is that proxy. She takes their wares, perhaps stolen goods, perhaps legitimate imports, and sells them to the citizens who would never deign to buy from a cat. She launders the reputation of the goods. If you buy a ring from Ysolda, it's a local find. If you buy it from Resard, it's stolen property. She provides the veneer of Nord respectability to a trade network that is otherwise criminalized. This makes her an active participant in the subversion of her own city's laws. She's effectively a smuggler in a blue dress, and the sad truth is she has to be. The legitimate avenues are closed to her. She doesn't have the capital to compete with Belethor's general goods on a fair playing field. Belethor has a shop. He has stock. He has a sleazy charm that somehow works. Ysolda has none of that. So she turns to the Forbidden Alliance. She leverages the people no one else will talk to. It is a classic survival strategy of the marginalized. If the system won't let you in, you build your own system with the other outcasts. But consider the loneliness of that position. The Khajiit are nomads. They pack up and leave. One day Ysolda walks out to the camp and they're gone, moved on to Markarth or Dawnstar. She is left standing in the empty circle of dead grass alone again. They're not her friends. They're transient business associates who would likely sell her out for a handful of skooma if the Thalmor applied enough pressure. She's projecting a mentorship onto a group of people who are essentially survivalists. Resard might like her, but he won't die for her. There is also a racial dynamic here that adds to the hidden truth. Skyrim is a harsh place for anyone who isn't a Nord, and even Nords can be harsh to non-traditional Nords. Ysolda's affinity for the beast races, she's also friendly with the Argonians on the docks of Windhelm in some interactions, marks her as a blood traitor in the eyes of the more radical Stormcloaks. If the civil war turns and the Stormcloaks take Whiterun, Ysolda's known association with the caravans could put a target on her back. She is gambling that her neutrality and her smile will protect her. But ideologies rarely care about smiles. Let's look at the specific dialogue again. I can learn a lot from them. What is she learning? She isn't learning how to forge iron or stitch leather. She is learning how to fence. She is learning how to spot a mark. She is learning the geography of the shadows. This education changes a person. It hardens them. The Ysolda who started this journey might have been a naive girl who just liked cats, but the Ysolda who exists now is calculating profit margins on illegal goods. She is losing her innocence one transaction at a time. This alliance also explains why she is always outside. She is the bridge. A bridge gets walked on. A bridge gets weathered. She exists in the gap between the civilized world of the city and the wild, lawless world of the road. It's a windy, cold and lonely place to be. While other women are weaving tapestries or tending to their families, Ysolda is negotiating with a cat who speaks in riddles and wears armour made of strange foreign leathers. Furthermore, look at the goods the Khajiit actually sell. Lockpicks, poisons, moon sugar. These aren't innocent commodities. By aligning herself with them, Ysolda is tacitly approving of the trade in vice. She's brushing shoulders with the darkest elements of Skyrim's economy. Does she use the moon sugar? Does she use the poisons? Probably not, but she knows the price of them, she knows the demand, and that knowledge stains her. It separates her from the good women of the Whiterun who turn a blind eye to such things. Ysolda stares right into the abyss of the black market and asks, "What's the markup?" There is a moment of cognitive dissonance for the player here. You, the Dragonborn, often use the Khajiit to fence your stolen loot. When you see Ysolda there, you see a mirror. She's doing what you do, just on a smaller, sadder scale. You're the guild master. She's the street-level associate. It creates a bond, but it's a bond of thieves. Ultimately, her relationship with the caravans is a cry for something different. She is bored by the stagnation of Whiterun. The Nords are predictable. The Khajiit are exciting, dangerous, and mysterious. They represent the elsewhere, pun intended, that she will never see. She travels vicariously through their stories. When Risad tells her of the sands of elsewhere, or the jungles of Tenmar, she gets to escape her muddy reality for a few minutes. It is a form of emotional tourism. She pays for it with tusks and secrets, buying glimpses of a world she's too afraid to visit herself. So, when you see her walking back through the city gates, clutching a small sack of spices or coins, notice how she keeps her head down. She's re-entering the respectable world, putting the mask back on. But under her fingernails there is the dust of the road, and in her mind there is the whisper of the caravan, a reminder that she doesn't truly belong to the city she calls home. She's a stranger within her own walls, finding comfort in the company of those who have no walls at all. If the association with the Khajiit caravans is a social misdemeanor, what we're about to uncover next is a full-blown felony. We have peeled back the layer of the struggling merchant and the social pariah, but now we must confront the darkest shadow in Ysolda's portfolio. Beneath the polite smiles and the chatter about buying an inn, Ysolda is actively running a narcotics distribution ring. This isn't hyperbole. This is a cold, hard, in-game mechanic that many players miss because they don't read the notes found on corpses. If you wander west of Whiterun, past the crumbling Fort Greymore and into the misty, giant-infested swamplands, you will find a location called Sleeping Tree Camp. It's a surreal, beautiful and dangerous place, dominated by a tree that shouldn't exist, a leafless, glowing, purple-veined anomaly that hums with alien energy. Inside the nearby cave you find the body of an orc named Ulag. On Ulag's corpse you find a note. The note is titled simply Ysolda's Message. It reads, "Ulag, the Khajiit are gone and you still haven't brought me the sap. I'd go get it myself, but I can't risk the guards catching me with it. Get the sap to my stall in Whiterun as soon as you can. Ysolda." Let that sink in. The innocent girl who sells flowers and compliments your armour is employing runners to smuggle a controlled hallucinogenic substance past the city guards. She explicitly acknowledges the illegality of the act. She knows the risks. She knows that if she's caught, her reputation and likely her freedom is forfeit. So she outsources the risk to Ulag, an expendable orc who ultimately paid for her ambition with his life. When you bring her the Sleeping Tree Sap yourself, she doesn't mourn Ulag. She doesn't ask what happened to him. She just buys the product. "I can give you 150 gold for it," she says. Business is business. This reveals the Sleeping Tree Sap Syndicate, a one-woman cartel operating out of a market stall. Sleeping Tree Sap is not a potion. It is a drug. In gameplay terms, drinking it slows down time, boosts your health, and makes your vision blur and swim in a purple haze. It creates a sense of euphoria and invincibility. In the lore, it is a potent narcotic, highly addictive and highly illegal. By trading in this, Ysolda isn't just a merchant, she's a dealer. She's the Walter White of Whiterun, hiding in plain sight, using her innocuous persona to mask a criminal enterprise. Now let's drop the obscure lore tidbit that makes this even stranger. Where does this tree come from? Why does it glow like that? The in-game book, The Sleeping Tree, offers a few theories, but the deepest lore connection, confirmed by hints in the novels The Infernal City and Lord of Souls by Greg Keyes, suggests that this tree grew from a spore that fell from the floating city of Umbriel. For those who skipped the novels, Umbriel was a floating island torn from the realm of Clavicus Vile, a chunk of oblivion that drifted over Tamriel, consuming souls and raising the dead. It was a terrifying necromantic apocalypse. The Sleeping Tree is essentially an invasive species from a Daedric realm. It is an eldritch abomination rooted in the soil of Skyrim. The sap isn't just drug juice, it is the blood of a Daedric entity. It connects the drinker to the hist, to oblivion, to forces beyond mortal comprehension. And Ysolda? She's bottling it, she's selling it. She is commodifying the runoff of a metaphysical nightmare because the profit margins are excellent. This context reframes her entirely. She isn't just selling apples and mammoth tusks. She is trafficking in the byproduct of a soul-eating floating city. Does she know this? Likely not the full extent. But she knows it's rare. She knows it's powerful. And she knows the Khajiit, her primary buyers for this stuff, crave it. The Khajiit love moon sugar and skooma, substances that have religious and cultural significance to them but are ruinous to others. Sleeping Tree Sap is a high of a different caliber. It's a luxury drug for the discerning addict, and Ysolda has cornered the market. The community has run wild with this information, fueling the Ysolda the Drug Lord fan theory. Players point out that once you engage in this trade with her, she becomes a fence for you, with the speech perk. This mechanic implies that she has the network to move stolen goods. Why would a legitimate grocer know how to fence a stolen diamond necklace? Because she is already plugged into the underworld. The theory posits that the Bannered Mare ambition is just a front, or rather a money laundering operation. You can't deposit drug money into the Bank of Cyrodiil. You have to sink it into a cash-heavy business like a tavern. Ysolda wants the inn so she can wash her sap money. Think about the sheer audacity required for this operation. She stands in the middle of the market, 20 feet from a guard patrol. She has vials of glowing purple goo hidden in her satchel or under her counter. Every time she greets the commander of the guard, she is committing a high-stakes bluff. "It's a fine day with you around," she says to the man who would throw her in the dungeon if he checked her pockets. That takes nerves of steel. It suggests a thrill-seeking personality buried deep beneath the beige layers of her dress. And consider the victim of this trade, Ulag. He died in a cave surrounded by giants and mammoths. He died trying to fulfill Ysolda's order. Did Ysolda send a search party? Did she send a letter to his kin? No, she waited. And when the Dragonborn showed up, she simply transferred the contract to you. You became the new mule. This callous disregard for the lives of her employees is chilling. To Ysolda, people are resources. Ulag was a broken tool. You are the upgrade. It is a ruthlessly capitalist worldview that views mortality as an occupational hazard for the help. The visual of the sap itself is worth dwelling on. It is beautiful. It glows with a bioluminescent violet light. In a world of grey stone and white snow, it is seductive. It looks magical, but the effect is disorientation. It slows the world down. It mimics the sensation of dying or dreaming. Ysolda is selling escapism in its purest, most dangerous form. In a land ravaged by civil war and dragons, where peasants live in fear of being burned alive, the ability to check out for a few hours is a valuable commodity. Ysolda is profiting from the misery and terror of the populace. She's selling them a purple haze to forget the fire breath of Alduin. Furthermore, look at the economics of the Sleeping Tree Sap. It sells for a high price, much higher than cabbage or leeks. This is her get-rich-quick scheme. The Bannered Mare is expensive. Hulda won't sell it for peanuts. Selling vegetables would take Ysolda 50 years to save up enough gold. Selling Daedric narcotics? That fast-tracks the dream. She's made a moral calculation. The law is an obstacle, not a guideline. She has weighed the risk of imprisonment against the reward of property ownership and decided to roll the dice. This illicit side hustle also explains why she's so friendly to the Dragonborn, a figure who operates above the law. She recognizes a fellow traveler. You kill people and take their stuff. She sells illegal drugs and fences stolen goods. You are two sides of the same chaotic coin. When she looks at you, she doesn't see a hero. She sees a partner in crime who is too powerful to be arrested. It creates a conspiratorial intimacy. I know what you are, her eyes seem to say, because I am something similar. Also, consider the location of the Sleeping Tree Camp. It is dangerously close to a giant encampment. In fact, the giants seem to guard the tree. Why? Do they drink the sap? Does it make them stronger? Does it make them docile? If Ysolda is sourcing her product from a giant sanctuary, she is disrupting the ecological balance of the region. She is stealing from the giants. We already established she wants their mammoth tusks. Now she wants their sacred tree juice. She is strip mining the giants' culture for parts. And what happens if the supply runs dry? The sleeping tree is unique. There is only one. If the sap stops flowing, or if the giants get too aggressive, her revenue stream collapses. This adds a layer of desperation to her operations. She's dependent on a single, highly volatile resource. It's a fragile empire built on purple bubbles. The Sleeping Tree Sap syndicate is the smoking gun that shatters the illusion of Ysolda the innocent maiden. It proves she's capable of deception, smuggling, and high-risk criminal activity. It shows she acts as a bridge between the civilized world and the chaotic, magical, dangerous underworld. She takes the raw, chaotic energy of oblivion, the sap, packages it, puts a price tag on it, and sells it to the highest bidder. She domesticates the eldritch for profit. So, when you hand her that glowing vial and see the gold coins slide into your palm, remember what that transaction represents. You aren't helping a struggling shopkeeper. You're completing a drug deal in the middle of the town square. You're funding a criminal enterprise that preys on the desperate and the addicted. And Ysolda, she just tucks the vial away, smiles that vacant, sunny smile, and goes back to complaining about the weather, while the ghost of Ulag rots in a cave, forgotten by everyone but the mud crabs. If the Khajiit represent the cunning shadow market aspect of Ysolda's education, the orcs represent something far more brutal and pragmatic, the sheer, uncompromising weight of survival. While the Nords of Whiterun are busy squabbling over the petty, localized politics of the Battleborn and Greymane feud, Ysolda has turned her gaze toward the mountain ridges, to the strongholds where the code of Malakath dictates life and death. It is a core in-game fact that Ysolda is one of the few Nords in the city who is completely detached from the defining clan conflict of Whiterun. Ask her about the Battleborns or the Greymanes, and she offers a neutral, almost dismissive assessment. She doesn't pick a side. In a city where your surname is your shield and your sword, Ysolda chooses to be a Ronin. But she isn't alone. She has found kinship with the Orsimer, the Orcs, specifically through her relationship with Ulag. the ill-fated runner we found dead in the Sleeping Tree Cave. The connection to Ulag wasn't a one-off accident. You don't just stumble upon an orc willing to traffic dangerous magical substances unless you have spent time cultivating relationships within that community. This implies that Ysolda has been auditing the stronghold lifestyle. The orcs of Skyrim are the ultimate pariahs, often derided as pig children by the more xenophobic Nords, looking at you, Rolf Stonefist. They are tolerated for their smithing, but socially exiled to the fringes of the map. By doing business with them, Ysolda is effectively saying that she values competence over bloodline, a very un-Nord way of thinking. The lesson she has learned from the strongholds is simple. If you are weak, you die. If you cannot defend your claim, you do not own it. This is the code of Malakath distilled into economics. In the strongholds, a chief holds power only as long as he is the strongest. In the market, Ysolda realizes, a merchant holds power only as long as they have the best supply chain. She has adopted a might makes right philosophy, but she has swapped physical strength for logistical leverage. She uses the orcs' desperation and their exclusion from the city's legal protections to her advantage. Ulag couldn't walk into the Bannered Mare to sell his wares without being harassed by guards, so Ysolda became his face. She monetized his marginalization. There is an obscure lore tidbit regarding the city orcs versus the stronghold orcs that adds flavor to this dynamic. In Skyrim, orcs like Ulag who leave the stronghold are often considered honorless by their kin, yet they are still viewed as savages by the city folk. They are in a cultural limbo. Ysolda occupies a similar spiritual space. She is a Nord who acts like an imperial merchant with the morals of a Khajiit and the ruthlessness of an orc. She is a cultural chimera. This makes her relationship with Ulag deeply tragic. They were two exiles using each other to survive, but only one of them had the luxury of a warm bed inside the walls. This alignment with the orcs also highlights her alienation from traditional Nord femininity. Nord women are expected to be shield maidens or hearth keepers. They are fierce, loyal to the clan, and deeply rooted in tradition. Ysolda is none of these things. She doesn't fight, she deals. She doesn't weave, she smuggles. By associating with the orcs, she is subconsciously rejecting the role society has laid out for her. The orc women are smiths and hunters. They are valued for their utility, not their decorative presence. Perhaps Ysolda envies that. She stands in a dress selling flowers, but inside she is hammering out iron plans on the anvil of her ambition. Community debates often flare up regarding Ysolda's neutrality. Some fans view her refusal to pick a side in the civil war or the clan feud as wisdom, a sign that she sees the bigger picture. Others argue it's pure opportunism, a mercenary mindset that cares only for the colour of gold, not the colour of the banner. But if you look at her through the lens of her Orcish connections, a third theory emerges. She views the Nords as soft. The Battleborns and Greymanes fight with words and influence. The orcs fight with volatility and blood. Ysolda, having seen the raw reality of the drug trade and the poaching rings, likely views the squabbles of the Cloud District as childish. She has seen the real world, the world where Ulag died, and it has made her cynical about the pageantry of Nord honour. Let's be honest, the social cost of this friendship must be immense. Imagine the whispers in the market. There goes Ysolda talking to that greenskin again. In a small town like Whiterun, reputation is currency. By spending her social capital on orcs and Khajiit, she is bankrupting her standing with the old money of the hold. This explains why she's so desperate to buy the inn. If she owns the inn, the Nords have to talk to her. They have to respect her. Ownership is the only way to force the community to accept her despite her questionable associates. Furthermore, consider the physical danger she exposes herself to by proxy. Orcs deal in violence. The weapons they forge, the armour they wear, it is all designed for war. By integrating herself into their economy, Ysolda is playing with fire. If Ulag had been caught by the guards while alive, and if he had been persuaded in the Dragon's Reach dungeon, he could have implicated her. She is trusting her life to the silence of people who've been taught that trust is a weakness. It creates a tension in her character, a high-wire act where one slip means the chopping block. The lesson from the pariahs is ultimately about the expendability of life. In a stronghold, if a chief is weak, he is killed and replaced. It is a cycle. Ysolda applies this to her business. Ulag failed. Replace him. The Dragonborn is available. Hire them. She has stripped the sentimentality out of her relationships. She treats people like gear in an inventory menu, slot them in where they provide the best stats, discard them when they break. It is a cold, efficient and deeply orcish way to view the world, masked behind a smile that is as artificial as the peace treaties signed by the Empire. Also, look at the goods. Orcish armour and weapons are prized for their durability. They are ugly, brutal and effective. Ysolda's business model is exactly the same. It isn't pretty. Selling drugs, poaching mammoths, fencing stolen goods. But it works. It survives the harsh climate. She's built a business that is orcish in its construction, ugly, strong and defiant. Finally, there's a haunting sadness in the fact that her only true mentors are the people her society deems monsters. She looks at the Jarls and the Thanes and sees hypocrisy. She looks at the Khajiit and the Orcs and sees honesty, even if that honesty is brutal. She would rather deal with a thief who admits he is a thief than a politician who pretends to be a hero. It is a lonely intellectual position to hold, standing in the bustling market of Whiterun, surrounded by her own people, yet feeling more kinship with the dead orc in the swamp than the living Nords in the square. She's a stranger in her own skin, disguised as a merchant, learning the art of survival from the ones who have been hunted for centuries. Now we must turn our gaze from the cold, calculated survivalism of the drug trade to a moment of chaotic absurdity that hides a genuinely terrifying encounter with the divine. We're talking, of course, about A Night to Remember. To the Dragonborn, this quest is a comedy of errors, a hangover-style romp, across Skyrim fueled by too much mead and a Daedric prince named Sanguine. But let's flip the camera angle. Let's look at this night through Ysolda's eyes. It isn't a comedy. It's a horror story about a shopkeeper forced to negotiate with a chaotic god while the world spins out of control. The core in-game fact is unavoidable. During the quest, you track your drunken footsteps back to Whiterun, where Ysolda confronts you. She tells you that you, along with a man named Sam, bought a wedding ring from her on credit. She demands you pay for it or return it. It seems like a standard merchant interaction, perhaps a bit annoyed but fundamentally transactional. "You don't remember?" she asks, incredulous. "You were rambling about your one true love." But pause the tape. Let's reconstruct that scene. It's late. The market is likely empty, the stalls boarded up against the night chill. Or perhaps it was inside the Bannered Mare, the fire dying down, the shadows lengthening. Ysolda is there, perhaps counting her coin, perhaps dreaming of the day she owns the place. In walk two figures, you, the legendary Dragonborn looking absolutely wasted, and Sam Gaven, a man who radiates a strange magnetic energy. We know Sam is Sanguine, the Daedric prince of debauchery. Sanguine isn't just a party god, in the deep lore, specifically looking at his role in the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion and various theological texts like On Oblivion, Sanguine is the prince of darker natures, of stripping away inhibitions until only the raw, ugly animal remains. His presence distorts reality. He creates pocket realms of madness. When he walks into a room, the air changes. The lighting gets a little too red. The laughter gets a little too shrill. Ysolda, with her keen merchant's intuition, would have felt this. She has spent time with Khajiit smugglers and orcish outcasts. She knows how to read dangerous people. When Sam Gaven leaned over the counter, or the table, and asked for a ring, Ysolda wasn't just making a sale, she was de-escalating a hostage situation. She was staring into the eyes of a being that smelled of brimstone and roses, a being whose smile probably had too many teeth. Why did she give the ring on credit? Ysolda is a shrewd businesswoman. She demands mammoth tusks for favours. She doesn't just hand out gold jewellery to drunks. The sad truth is that she was likely terrified. She saw the power rolling off Sam. She saw the glazed, possessed look in the Dragonborn's eyes, and she did the only thing she knew how to do. She facilitated the transaction to get them away from her. She gave them the ring to make them leave. It wasn't a sale, it was a tribute to a chaotic deity to spare her life. And then there is the ring itself. Where did she get it? Ysolda doesn't sell jewellery. Frawlia Greymane sells jewellery. Ysolda sells, well, nothing officially. She's a drifter. This implies the ring was personal. This brings us to a poignant realization. Was this her wedding ring? Not one she wore, but one she was saving? Maybe a family heirloom, or a ring she bought for herself in a moment of hopeful delusion, thinking that maybe, just maybe, she would find someone who wanted to marry a merchant with no shop. Handing that specific object over to a drunken adventurer to be used in a mockery of a marriage is a profound violation of her privacy and her dreams. She watched you take a symbol of eternal love and commitment and turn it into a prop for a drunken joke. And she had to smile and nod because you are the Dragonborn and your friend is a monster in human skin. Later, you find out who the ring was for. Moira, a hagraven, a twisted feather-covered witch living in the wilderness. When Ysolda learns of this, and she surely does, because news travels fast in Whiterun, imagine the humiliation. Her ring, potentially her grandmother's ring, or her own hope chest treasure, was placed on the clawed finger of a hagraven in a drug-fueled ceremony. It debases the very concept of the domestic bliss she craves. She wants a home, a business, a partner. You took the symbol of that desire and gave it to a monster. This incident has sparked a fascinating community debate and fan theory. Is Ysolda actually a secret worshipper of Sanguine? Some players argue that her involvement is too convenient. She is the only person in Whiterun who plays a pivotal role in this quest. She has the ring ready. She knows Sam. She deals in Sleeping Tree Sap, a narcotic. Sanguine is the prince of excess. Is it possible that Ysolda's pleasant facade hides a devotee of the Prince of Revelry? The theory suggests that she wasn't a victim that night, but a facilitator. Maybe she summoned Sanguine. Maybe she was hoping to cut a deal with him, trade a night of debauchery for the deed to the Bannered Mare. It's a dark interpretation, but it fits her pattern of seeking power from dangerous sources, Khajiit orcs. If this is true, it paints her as even more desperate. She isn't just smuggling drugs. She is courting Daedric intervention to achieve her middle-class dreams. She's willing to risk her soul for a liquor license. However, if we stick to the more likely innocent bystander narrative, The sadness comes from her powerlessness. When you return to her, days or weeks later, hungover and confused, she doesn't scream, she doesn't cry, she just asks for the money. It was expensive, she says. She reduces the trauma of the night to a line item in a ledger. This is her coping mechanism. If she can put a price tag on it, she can control it. If she makes you pay 2,000 gold or whatever the persuasion check allows, she reclaims her agency. She turns a nightmare into a profit, but look at her posture when you discuss it. The voice acting, delightfully subtle, carries a hint of exasperation and relief. She's just glad you are alive and perhaps more glad that Sam is gone. She held on to that secret for days. The Dragonborn ran off to marry a witch. She could have told everyone. She could have ruined your reputation, but she didn't. She kept your dirty secret. Why? Because a merchant keeps her clients' confidence, or because she is complicit? There is also the wedding dress aspect of the quest that sometimes gets cut or bugged, but in the dialogue files there are hints that Ysolda might have helped with the outfit too. She was essentially the wedding planner for a Daedric prank. She was forced to participate in the absurdity, likely while sober, watching the two most powerful beings in the room make a mockery of the sanctity of marriage. And what happens to the ring? If you fetch it from Moira's cold, dead claw and bring it back, Ysolda takes it. She takes back the ring that has been on a Hagraven's finger, a ring that has been in a muddy nest surrounded by feathers and dark magic. Does she clean it? Does she sell it to the next unsuspecting couple? Or does she put it back in her box, a cursed souvenir of the night the world went mad? It serves as a grim reminder that Ysolda is always the bridesmaid, never the bride, quite literally in this case. She equips the heroes, she facilitates the quests, she provides the ring. But she never gets to go on the adventure, and she certainly never gets the fairy tale ending. She is the NPC grounded in reality while you fly off on a magical bender. The callback here to the Sleeping Tree Sap is vital. Sanguine represents the ultimate high, the ultimate loss of control. Ysolda sells the sap to give people a taste of that. Meeting Sanguine in the flesh must have been a terrifying validation of her business model. She saw what unfiltered desire looks like, and it scared her. It reinforced her need for walls, for the Bannered Mare, for a place where she can lock the door and keep the Daedric princes out. So when you pay her off and the questlog updates, don't just sprint away. Think about what you left her with. You left her with the memory of a night where the laws of reality bent, where she was coerced by a god, and where her romantic symbol was desecrated. You treat it as a funny story to tell at the tavern. She treats it as another near-death experience in a life full of them. She pockets the coin, rubs her thumb over the gold, and convinces herself that it was worth it. But deep down she knows she brushed against the void, and the void tried to buy a wedding ring on credit. Turn your back on the Khajiit camp, leave the memory of Sanguine's madness behind, and walk back into the heart of the Plains district. Look to your right, just past the well. There stands the physical manifestation of Ysolda's inadequacy, Belethor's general goods. If the Bannered Mare is the object of her desire, Belethor's shop is the monument to her failure. A core in-game fact that defines the economic geography of Whiterun is that Belethor holds an absolute monopoly on general merchandise. There is no competition. If you want to sell a garnet, a wolf pelt, a cast iron pot, and a scroll of fireball all in one transaction, you have to go to him. He is the gatekeeper of commerce. Ysolda, standing just outside his door in the mud and the wind, is essentially picking up his scraps. She is the economic equivalent of a remora fish swimming alongside a shark, hoping to catch a stray piece of meat. We have all heard that voice. It grates like a rusty hinge. Everything's for sale, my friend. Everything. If I had a sister, I'd sell her in a second. It is a line delivered with such sleazy, cheerful nihilism that it has become legendary. But to Ysolda, that voice must be the soundtrack of her nightmares. Every time the door opens and that bell rings, she hears Belethor closing another deal that could have been hers. She watches the Dragonborn walk in with a backpack full of dungeon loot, tens of thousands of septims worth of GDP, and she watches them walk out lighter and richer. She gets none of that action. She cannot afford to buy your dragon bones. She lacks the liquidity. She is forced to watch the wealth of the province funnel into the pockets of a man who openly admits he would traffic his own family for a profit. This rivalry, if you can even call it that, since a hammer doesn't have a rivalry with a nail, reveals the psychological toll of her daily existence. Belethor is a Breton. In the obscure lore of Tamriel's anthropology, particularly looking at the stereotypes found in books like Races of Tamriel, Bretons are often characterized as politically sharp, magically inclined, and eccentric. But in the merchant world, they're known for a specific kind of cutthroat mercantilism. They are the deal makers of High Rock, the court intriguers who treat trade wars like actual wars. Belethor represents the cynical, entrenched establishment. He doesn't need to be nice. He doesn't need to ask you about your day. He has the inventory, so he has the power. Ysolda, conversely, is trying to monetize kindness. She's banking on the idea that customer service matters in a feudal society. But does it? When you're over-encumbered and just want to dump 400 pounds of Dwemer scrap metal, do you care that Ysolda is sweet? No, you care that Belethor has 750 gold in his register. Ysolda is fighting a losing battle against convenience. She's trying to sell a personality in a market that only cares about utility. There is a dark, fascinating mechanic hidden in the game's script that the community has debated for years. If Belethor dies, whether by a vampire attack, a dragon raid, or an accidental arrow to the knee from a shadowy corner, guess who takes over his shop? Ysolda. This is a massive revelation. It means she is the designated heir to his empire, but why? They aren't related. They don't seem to be friends. Their dialogue ranges from non-existent to strictly professional. This mechanic fuels a rampant fan theory that Ysolda is actively waiting for him to die, or perhaps plotting it. The theory suggests a Game of Thrones style maneuvering in the Whiterun market. Is it possible that her innocent questions to the Dragonborn, her connections to the assassins, implied by her generally shady network, and her drug money are all part of a war chest to eventually buy him out or bury him? When you look at it this way, Ysolda standing outside his shop isn't loitering. She's a vulture circling a dying animal. She knows that in Skyrim life expectancy is short. Belethor is abrasive. He likely has enemies. All she has to do is wait. It adds a layer of predatory patience to her character. She is the understudy waiting for the lead actor to break a leg, literally. But until that happens, she lives in his shadow. Consider the humiliation of her supply chain compared to his. Belethor likely has contracts with the East Empire Company, or at least legitimate caravan guards. Ysolda has to sneak out to the Khajiit tents. Belethor sits by a warm fire inside his shop, eating cooked salmon. Ysolda stands in the rain, eating an apple she likely bartered for. The disparity is visual, visceral, and constant. Belethor also represents the honest crook. He tells you exactly who he is, a greedy, sleazy merchant. I'd sell my sister. It's awful, but it's transparent. Ysolda is the dishonest saint. She smiles, she acts pure, but she sells drugs and deals with poachers. In a way, Belethor is morally superior because he's not a hypocrite. Ysolda hates him, not just because he is successful, but because he is free. He doesn't have to wear the mask she wears. He can be a jerk and still get rich. That must burn her inside, the realization that in this world, kindness is a tax you pay, while cruelty pays dividends. There is also the matter of the sister line. Let's analyse that through Ysolda's perspective. As a woman in commerce, hearing her main competitor joke about selling a female relative as chattel reflects the misogynistic atmosphere she has to navigate. She isn't just fighting his prices, she is fighting a boys' club mentality. Belethor, Lucan Valerius in Riverwood, the Blackbriars in Riften, the big players are often men or powerful matriarchs with deep connections. Ysolda is a single woman with no clan backing. Belethor's casual dismissal of human worth stands in stark contrast to her attempt to build relationships. Yet, as we saw with the Sleeping Tree Sap, Ysolda is willing to compromise her morals too. She might not sell a sister, but she will sell a soul-destroying drug. She's becoming more like Belethor every day, even if she hates him. The cutthroat competition isn't just about gold, it's about space. Whiterun is small. The Cloud District is for the Jarl. The Wind District is for the residential homes. The Plains District is the commercial hub. Belethor occupies the prime real estate. Ysolda is relegated to the thoroughfare. This spatial exclusion reinforces her status as a non-entity. If you don't have a door, do you exist as a business? In the eyes of the law, barely. She's a street hawker. He is a proprietor. This dynamic also explains her obsession with the Mammoth Tusk. She needs a unique value proposition. Belethor sells general goods, buckets, cheese, iron daggers. Ysolda needs to sell what he won't touch. He won't deal with the Khajiit because it's bad for his legitimate reputation. So she fills that vacuum. She takes the risks he refuses to take. She is the black market alternative to his high street monopoly. Imagine the nights when the market closes. Belethor locks his heavy wooden door. You can hear the satisfying thud of the bolt sliding home. He counts his takings in the safety of his shop. Ysolda has to walk home, her purse likely light, her feet wet. She passes his shop every single day. It is a fortress of everything she wants and everything she hates. And let's not forget the interactions with the player. You, the Dragonborn, are the single biggest destabilizing element in this economy. You choose who gets rich. If you sell everything to Belethor, you keep him in power. If you invest in Ysolda via the investor perk or marriage, you tip the scales. She is silently pleading with you to break his monopoly. When she asks if you want to buy anything, she's really asking, will you validate my existence? But usually we don't. We go to Belethor because he has 750 gold and she has 50. We reinforce the status quo because it is convenient for us. We're complicit in her stagnation. We leave her standing there, staring at the closed door of the general goods store, plotting a hostile takeover that might only happen if a dragon breathes fire in the wrong direction. So, the next time you chuckle at Belethor's sleazy greeting, look out the window. See Ysolda standing there. Realize that his success is the direct architect of her misery. She's waiting for the sign to fall, for the windows to break, for the bell to stop ringing. She is waiting to inherit the kingdom of clutter, and until then, she has to smile at the man who would sell his sister, and wish she had something that valuable to sell herself. The wind shifts again. It's no longer carrying the scent of snow or the earthy musk of the mammoth herds. Now it smells of sulphur, tension, and the metallic tang of sharpened steel. We have explored Ysolda's personal struggles, her criminal entanglements, and her quiet rivalries. But all of these petty concerns are about to be eclipsed by a tidal wave of history. We are talking about the Civil War, and specifically the Siege of Whiterun. For the player, the siege is a spectacle. It's a set-piece battle where you get to slash through waves of generic soldiers, dodge catapult fire, and feel like a god of war. But for Ysolda, this is the apocalypse. The core in-game fact is unavoidable. Whiterun is the linchpin of the conflict. Jarl Balgruuf tries to stay neutral, but neutrality is a luxury that geography doesn't afford him. Eventually the war comes to the city gates. The catapults are set up in the Pelagius farm fields. The armies gather, and inside the walls the civilians wait. Imagine Ysolda during the days leading up to the battle. The market stalls are empty. The Khajiit caravans have long since fled. They sense trouble like animals sense an earthquake. The supply chains she has painstakingly built are severed. Ulag is dead. The roads are choked with soldiers. Her entire economic ecosystem, fragile as it was, grinds to a halt. She stands in the market, not selling, but watching the barricades go up. The timber that blocks the city gates is the sound of her prison locking her in. When the first catapult stone hits, it doesn't just smash a wall, it smashes the illusion of safety. We know from the scripted events of the battle that the city takes damage. Heimskir's house is obliterated. Severio Pelagii, the old farmer who sells produce in the market alongside Ysolda, is killed. Let's dwell on Severio for a moment. He isn't a soldier, he is an old man who grows cabbages. Ysolda stood next to him for years. They likely exchanged pleasantries about the weather every single morning. And in the chaos of the siege, he is cut down or crushed by debris. For Ysolda, finding out that Severio is dead isn't just a sad plot point, it is a terrifying reality check. It proves that being neutral doesn't save you. Severio didn't pick a side, he just wanted to sell his crops, and he died for it. Ysolda hides. Where does she go? Does she cower in her small house near the wall? Does she seek shelter in the Bannered Mare, hoping its thick timbers will hold? The game mechanics force the civilians to flee to the Jarl's palace or lock themselves indoors, but narratively imagine the terror of huddling in a corner while the sky rains fire. Every impact shakes the dust from the ceiling. Every scream from the street could be a friend, a customer, or a guard she bribed. This event threatens to burn her dreams to ash and cinder, literally. The Bannered Mare is made of wood. If a fire pot from a catapult hits the roof, the inn is gone. Hulda is gone. The ledger is gone. The future Ysolda has mortgaged her soul for would vanish in a column of smoke. She isn't just afraid for her life, she's afraid of being reset to zero. If the market burns, she has nothing. She has no skills to rebuild. She cannot forge new hinges. She cannot hew stone. She is a merchant of software in a hardware crisis. There's a profound sense of helplessness here. The Dragonborn is out there on the drawbridge shouting people apart, deciding the fate of the Empire. Ysolda is essentially luggage. She's an asset to be protected or collateral damage to be mourned. This lack of agency must be suffocating for someone as controlling as her. She has spent her life manipulating outcomes, getting the tusk, moving the sap, managing the ring, but she cannot manipulate a catapult. War is the one transaction she cannot negotiate. Community discussions often dissect the political aftermath of the siege. If the Stormcloaks win, Vignar Greymane becomes Jarl. The atmosphere of the city shifts. It becomes more insular, more Nord first. For Ysolda, whose business relies on being friendly with everyone, including outsiders like the Khajiit and Imperial sympathizers, a Stormcloak victory is a business risk. The Greymanes are traditionalists. Would they tolerate a drug-running, Khajiit-loving merchant as easily as Balgruuf did? Conversely, if the Imperials hold the city, the heavy hand of the Empire clamps down. Taxes might rise, martial law might be stricter, the corruption Ysolda exploits might be replaced by rigid bureaucracy. Either way, the golden age of Balgruuf's indifference is over. The city is scarred. The debris stays in the streets. The mood is grim. There is an obscure lore detail regarding the destructibility of Whiterun. In the game files and the creation kit, we can see that the developers intended for more damage. The Civil War was originally going to be more dynamic, with famine and shortages affecting the vendors. While cut from the final game, the narrative implication remains. War destroys economies first. Ysolda's entire struggle is to rise above poverty. The war threatens to drag everyone down into it. Think about the sound of the victory speech, whoever gives it. Vignar or Balgruuf stands on the steps of Dragon's Reach. The soldiers cheer. But down in the Plains district, Ysolda is likely stepping out of her door, checking for smoke. She walks to the market. She sees the crater where a stall used to be. She sees the bloodstains on the cobbles that the rain hasn't washed away yet. She isn't cheering. She is assessing the depreciation of the neighbourhood. This trauma likely reinforces her obsession with the Bannered Mare. The inn survived. It stood while other houses fell. To Ysolda, this confirms that the inn is the safest place in the world. It is a bunker disguised as a pub. Her desire to own it becomes even more desperate after the siege. She doesn't just want a business. She wants a stronghold that doesn't look like a stronghold. The siege also forces her to confront the mortality of her customer base. Soldiers die. Guards die. The people she sells to are disappearing. This shrinking market creates a scarcity mindset. She has to be more ruthless. If Severio is dead, who gets his spot? Can she expand? Can she take over his supply of vegetables? It sounds cold, but survival is cold. The war strips away the veneer of civilization, leaving only the scavengers. And Ysolda, as we have established, is a very polite scavenger. Consider the fan theory that Ysolda is actually a sleeper agent for the Thalmor, or a Stormcloak spy. Players cite her neutrality as suspicious. Why doesn't she care, they ask. But the siege disproves this. A spy has a mission. Ysolda just has fear. Her neutrality isn't a political stance, it's a survival crouch. She keeps her head down so it doesn't get cut off. During the siege, she realizes that ideologies don't stop arrows, only stone walls stop arrows. Also, think about the Khajiit during this time. They are gone, cut off. Ysolda's supply of moon sugar and sleeping tree sap is severed. She goes into withdrawal. Not chemical withdrawal, but financial withdrawal. Her high-margin items are unavailable. She's forced to rely on the meagre scraps of the legitimate market, which is now flooded with inflation and scarcity. She has to sell apples for 5 gold because no one has any food. She becomes a war profiteer not out of malice, but out of necessity. The siege is the moment Ysolda realizes that Whiterun is not immortal. The Cloud District is just stone that can be shattered. The Gilder Gleam can burn. The permanence she sought is an illusion. This existential dread likely keeps her awake at night long after the fires are put out. She realizes she is building a castle on shifting sand. And where is the Dragonborn during the cleanup? You're usually gone, off to Solitude or Windhelm to finish the fight. You leave the broken city behind. Ysolda stays in the wreckage. She has to sweep the glass. She has to step over the rubble. She is the custodian of the aftermath. This reinforces the disconnect between the hero and the NPC. You break the world. She has to live in the shards. The image of Ysolda the day after the siege is one of the saddest in her chronicle. She is dressed in her fine clothes, which now look ridiculous against the backdrop of a smouldering city. She stands in the market trying to smile, trying to say, "It's a fine day with you around," but her voice wavers, because it isn't a fine day, it's a day of mourning. And the you she's talking to, the Dragonborn, is the one who brought the war to her doorstep. She looks at the damaged Bannered Mare, touches the scorched wood of the doorframe and makes a silent vow. She will own this place, she will fortify it, and she will never ever let herself be this vulnerable again. The war didn't kill her, but it killed the last lingering traces of her innocence. She's now a survivor of the siege, and survivors do whatever it takes to ensure they are never victims again. The dust of the siege settles, the stones are swept away, and life in Whiterun returns to a semblance of normalcy. In this quiet aftermath, a new chapter often begins for Ysolda, one that is ostensibly a happily ever after, but in reality is a study in profound, echoing isolation. We're talking about the Dragonborn's marriage. Let's look at the mechanics of romance in Skyrim. It is swift, brutal, and transactional. You wear an amulet of Mara. You speak to Ysolda. Since you brought her that Mammoth Tusk 3 months ago, she looks at you, sees the amulet and says, "Interested in me, are you?" You say yes. She says yes. You go to Riften, stand in a temple for 30 seconds, say, "I do," and suddenly you are married. There is no courtship, no dating, no getting to know each other's families, which is good, because Ysolda doesn't seem to have one. It is a contract signed in the presence of a priest, binding 2 strangers together for eternity. If you choose Ysolda, you're choosing the stay-at-home archetype. Unlike Ayla the Huntress, who can follow you into battle, or Mjol the Lioness, who comes with a heavily armed stalker named Erin, Ysolda stays put. This is a core in-game fact. Ysolda is not a follower, she is a fixture. When you marry her, you aren't gaining a companion. You're acquiring a piece of furniture that greets you. Consider the reality of this union from her perspective. She moves into your home, let's assume it's Bree's home, right next door to her old life. She brings her meagre possessions, she sets up shop, and then you leave. You sprint out the door to go kill Alduin or Miraak, or to collect 30 crimson nirn roots in a cave. You're gone for weeks, maybe months in game time. Ysolda is left alone in a house that isn't really hers. It's filled with your trophies, dragon skulls, troll skulls, weapons that glow with ominous enchantments, and books you've stolen from half the libraries in Tamriel. She lives in a museum of violence. She cooks meals you will never eat. She sleeps in a bed that is cold on one side 90% of the time. This isn't a marriage. It's a caretaking position for a ghost who occasionally stops by to drop off loot. The most heartbreaking mechanic is the store. Once married, Ysolda tells you, "I've decided to open a little store. It's not much, but it brings in some coin." Where is this store? It doesn't exist physically. She doesn't rent a stall. She doesn't displace Belethor. She stands in your kitchen and magically generates 100 gold a day. The community has long debated the nature of this store. Is she selling your loot? Is she selling her famous Sleeping Tree Sap out the back door? Or is she just managing investments? The sadder interpretation is that the store is a lie. She isn't selling anything. She's just keeping herself busy, managing the household finances, and she frames it as a store to maintain her dignity. She wants to be a merchant, remember? She wants to be a business mogul, but in your shadow, she's reduced to a housewife who hands you an allowance. Think about that dialogue interaction. You come home, covered in dragon blood and mud. You don't ask, "How was your day?" You ask, "Has the store made any money?" It is the first thing many players click. It turns the intimacy of a reunion into an ATM withdrawal. Ysolda smiles and hands you the coin. "Here's your share, love." It's 100 gold. To the Dragonborn who carries 50,000 gold and wears armour worth a kingdom, 100 gold is nothing. It's pocket lint. But to Ysolda, that 100 gold is her contribution. It's her attempt to be an equal partner in a relationship where the power dynamic is astronomically skewed. She is trying to buy your affection with pocket change, unaware that you just sold a single enchanted dagger for 10 times that amount. It highlights the vast gulf between her world and yours. She's playing Rosetta, an item shop's tale, and you are playing God of War. There is also the lover's comfort bonus. Mechanically, sleeping in the same bed as your spouse gives you a 15% skill learning boost. Narratively, this implies intimacy, but notice how it's implemented. You sleep for 1 hour, wake up, get the buff, and leave. You use her for the XP boost. She's a stat multiplier, a grind optimizer. Does she know this? Does she feel used when you rush into the bedroom, sleep for exactly 8 hours, and then immediately fast travel to Solstheim? The silence of the house must be deafening. If you have adopted children, Lucia from the Whiterun streets or Blay from the stables, Ysolda becomes their stepmother. She raises your children while you're absent. She teaches them, feeds them, protects them from the skeevers in the basement. Yet, when you return, the kids run to you. "Papa, Mama, you're back." You give them a doll or a wooden sword and you are the hero again. Ysolda stands in the background, the steady, reliable, unthanked infrastructure of the family. She bears the emotional labour of raising children who are biologically strangers to both of you, in a city that has been besieged, in a house filled with weapons. Obscure lore regarding the marriage ceremony dialogue adds a layer of fatalism. Merimal, the priest, speaks of life being short and love being the only sanctity. For Ysolda, life is long and boring. Her adventure ended the moment she said "I do." She achieved stability, yes. She no longer has to worry about starving, but she traded her hunger for a cage. She is trapped in the domestic sphere she thought she wanted, only to realize that without a partner, a home is just a box. There is a fan theory that suggests Ysolda marries the Dragonborn purely for protection. She knows the world is ending. She knows dragons are burning towns. Who is the safest person to be next to? The one killing the dragons. By this logic, the marriage is a survival bunker. She doesn't need to love you. She just needs you to be the deterrent that keeps the bandits away. This makes the absence tolerable for her. In fact, maybe she prefers it. If you are gone, you aren't bringing danger to the doorstep. She gets the prestige of being the Dragonborn's wife, which likely carries immense social clout in Whiterun, without the hassle of dealing with your chaotic presence. But if we assume she has a heart, the loneliness is crushing. Imagine her walking to the market now. She isn't the hungry girl looking for a break. She's the wealthy adventurer's wife. People treat her differently. Nazim probably actually speaks to her now, or at least sneers with a bit more respect. But she can't share the burden of her days with anyone. She can't tell you about the rude customer or the price of leeks because when you come home, you're talking about fighting a Daedric prince or navigating the Soul Cairn. Her problems seem trivial. She swallows her words. She listens to your epic tales and nods, realizing that she will never, ever understand the world you live in. And what about the Bannered Mare? Does she still want it? If you move her to Solitude or Markarth, you are physically ripping her away from her dream. "I like this house, but I miss Whiterun," she might say. If you move her to Lakeview Manor, you're isolating her in the deep woods, miles from civilization, surrounded by necromancers and wolves. There, she is truly alone. Just her, the kids, a cow, and the looming threat of a giant attack. If she stays in Whiterun, she still visits the market, she still looks at the inn. But now she has the gold. You could buy the Bannered Mare for her 10 times over. But the game doesn't let you. You can't buy it for her. You can't fulfill her dream. You can buy her clothes, jewellery, weapons, but you cannot buy her the one thing she actually wanted. So she remains in this limbo. Rich enough to buy the inn, but mechanically prevented from doing so. Trapped in a script that says she is just a merchant. The marriage of convenience is a tragedy of unfulfilled potential. Ysolda had hustle. She had grit. She was dealing drugs and hustling tusks. Marriage domesticates her. It neuters her ambition. She stops striving because there is no need to strive when your spouse has 1,000,000 gold. She becomes a trophy wife, a background NPC in her own life story. The fire that drove her to deal with orcs and Khajiit is smothered by the comfort of Breezehome. Ultimately, the Dragonborn is a terrible spouse. We are vagrants. We are murderers. We are hoarders. We bring danger and chaos wherever we go. Ysolda acts as the anchor, the one fixed point in a spinning world, but anchors drown. They sit at the bottom of the dark, cold ocean while the ship sails on. Ysolda is drowning in the safety you provided, waiting for the door to open, waiting for the sound of iron boots on wood, waiting to hand you 100 gold and hear you say goodbye again. The sun crests over the throat of the world, bathing the tundra in a pale golden light. For the Dragonborn, this sunrise marks the beginning of a new adventure. Perhaps a trek to the Forgotten Vale, a dive into an Ayleid ruin, or a battle against a legendary dragon atop a snow-capped peak. But for Ysolda, the sunrise marks the beginning of the loop. We often talk about the grand tragedies of Skyrim, the civil wars, the world-eating dragons, the vampire conspiracies. But there is a quieter, more insidious tragedy happening right in the centre of the Plains District. The tragedy of the script. Ysolda is trapped in a purgatory of repetition. Her life is governed not by free will, but by a rigid, unyielding schedule known in the game engine as an AI package. This is the core in-game fact that defines her existence. Every single day, at exactly 8 a.m, Ysolda leaves her house. She walks the exact same path to the market. She stands in the exact same spot. She stays there until 8 p.m. Then she walks to the Bannered Mare. Then she goes to sleep. Repeat. Forever. To the player who sprints past her at max speed, this routine provides the illusion of a living city. But stop and stand next to her. Don't interact. Just watch. Watch for an hour. Watch for a day. The illusion shatters, revealing a horrifying monotony. Ysolda isn't living. She is buffering. She clasps her hands. She shifts her weight from one foot to the other. She looks at the well. She looks at the sky. She looks at Carlotta's stall. She pulls out a basket, looks inside it, finds nothing, and puts it away. This is the monotony of the market stalls. It is a form of psychological erosion that would drive a sentient being to madness. Imagine standing in a muddy circle for 12 hours a day, every day, with absolutely nothing to do. She has no customers because she has no stall. She has no goods to arrange. She's an actor on a stage waiting for a cue that rarely comes. Her entire purpose during these hours is to provide crowd density for the player. She is human furniture. The sonic landscape of her prison is perhaps the worst part. We touched on this briefly, but let's truly analyse the auditory torture of the Whiterun market. Heimska, The priest of Talos stands just a few yards away, screaming at the top of his lungs. "We are but maggots, writhing in the filth of our own corruption. Trust in me, Whiterun. Trust in Heimskr. You, the player, can walk away. You can kill him, though that's a crime. You can tune him out. Ysolda cannot. She is rooted to the spot. She hears that sermon hundreds of times a day. Every inflection, every pause, every spittle-flecked consonant is burned into her brain. It is a looping track of religious fanaticism that never ends. Imagine the sheer mental fortitude required not to walk over there and shove a mammoth tusk down his throat, just to hear 5 seconds of silence. But she doesn't. She can't. Her script dictates that she stands there, pleasant and smiling, while a madman yells about maggots in her ear. There is a disturbing fan theory, or rather, a philosophical interpretation within the lore community regarding the concept of Chim and the Godhead. In Elder Scrolls metaphysics, the universe is a dream of a sleeping entity, the Godhead. To realize you're in a dream and assert your own individuality is to achieve Chim, essentially becoming a lucid dreamer with godlike powers, like Vivek or Talos. To realize you're in a dream but fail to maintain your ego is to zero-sum, to vanish from existence because you realize you aren't real. Apply this to Ysolda. Is she bored, or is she terrified that if she stops performing her role, she will cease to exist? Perhaps her rigid adherence to the routine is a survival mechanism. She clings to the monotony because the alternative is the void. She stares at the well, she listens to Heimskr, she walks her path, because these are the anchors that keep her tethered to reality. If she were to deviate, if she were to suddenly scream, or run, or punch Nazim, the dream might destabilize. She is the keeper of the status quo, the guardian of the mundane. Then there are the conversations she is forced to endure. It's not just Heimskr, it's the ambient dialogue of the other NPCs. She hears Nazim ask Carlotta if she sells fresh vegetables. She hears Braith bullying Lars Battleborn. "What are you looking at? I'm not afraid of you." I'm not afraid of you either. She hears this exchange every single day. It's like being trapped in a room where a broken record is skipping. She knows exactly what Ulfina Greymane is going to say to John Battleborn. She knows the punchline to every joke, the grievance of every feud. And amidst this cacophony of repetition, she has to maintain the mask of the cheerful merchant. When you, the Dragonborn, finally grace the market with your presence, she has to snap out of her vegetative state and offer a greeting. It's a fine day with you around. Is it? Is it really? Or is she just relieved that a variable has entered the equation? You are the chaos element. You wear different armor. You carry different weapons. You might jump on the well or shout at the sky. For a brief moment the loop is broken. You're the only unpredictable thing in her universe. But this brings us to the crushing boredom she hides from you, her spouse. When you return home to Breezehome, flush with the adrenaline of combat, vibrating with the power of the Thuum, Ysolda greets you with domestic simplicity. "Welcome home, love." She doesn't tell you that she spent 12 hours counting the cracks in the cobblestones. She doesn't tell you that she contemplated drowning herself in the well just to see if the physics engine would allow it. She plays the role of the contented wife. Why? Because she knows she cannot compete with your life. You have seen the soul cairn. You have ridden dragons. You have spoken to Daedric princes. If she complains about the boredom of the market, she sounds petty. She sounds small. "Oh, you battled a vampire lord? That sounds tough. I had to listen to Heimskr say maggots 600 times today." It doesn't compare. so she swallows her existential dread. She buries it under the dialogue of the store and the home-cooked meal. Obscure lore regarding the Radiant AI system in Oblivion, the predecessor to Skyrim, reveals that originally NPCs were supposed to be much smarter. They were supposed to have needs, desires, and the ability to fulfill them dynamically. But the developers found that the AI would go off the rails. NPCs would kill each other over a loaf of bread, or depopulate the town because they got hungry. So they lobotomized the AI. They put them on rails. Ysolda is the victim of this dumbed-down intelligence. She is a shadow of what she could have been. She has the desire for more, the Bannered Mare, but the programming of a statue. She is a complex character trapped in a simple code. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being the only person standing still in a world that is moving. The clouds move, the shadows lengthen, the guards patrol. But Ysolda's wait is static. She is waiting for a future that is structurally impossible unless a script trigger fires. She is waiting for Hulda to die, but Hulda is essential. She's waiting for the Bannered Mare to go up for sale, but the economy is frozen. She's waiting for you to come home, but you are the protagonist, and the protagonist must always leave. Consider the market research she claims to be doing. She stands there to learn the trade. But after 5 years, or however long your save file lasts, what is left to learn? She knows the price of a potato down to the decimal. She knows the supply chain of leeks better than the divines know the stars. Her continued presence in the market isn't education anymore, it's ritual. It's a cargo cult behaviour, performing the motions of a merchant in the hopes that the gods of commerce will bless her with a shop. The boredom is also physical. Her feet must ache. The cold wind of Whiterun bites through her dress. She doesn't wear armour. She doesn't have 100% resistance to frost. She stands in the sleet, the rain, and the snow, shivering, smiling, waiting. When it rains, she doesn't run for cover. She stands there getting soaked, because her package doesn't tell her to go inside until 8 p.m. She's a prisoner of the elements as much as the code. And what goes through her mind when she sees the other successful women of Skyrim? She sees Adriana Avenici banging away at the forge, creating weapons of war. She sees Arcadia mixing potions. She sees the Jarl's housecarl, Irileth, commanding guards. These women have agency. They have tools. Ysolda has a basket. She's the soft woman in a hard world. Her weapon is conversation, but in the market no one is listening. They're all just barking their own lines into the void. The crushing boredom is the silence of her own potential dying a slow death. Every day she spends in the market is a day she isn't running the inn. It's a day she isn't travelling with the Khajiit. It's a day she isn't living. She is simply existing, a background asset rendering in real time for your amusement. So, when you see her standing there, give her a nod. Acknowledge the sheer endurance it takes to do nothing for an eternity. She's fighting a battle harder than any dungeon crawl, the battle against the absolute crushing weight of redundancy. She is the Sisyphus of the Plains District, rolling the boulder of her ambition up the hill every morning at 8 a.m, only to watch it roll back down at 8 p.m, ready to start all over again the next day. And she does it all with a smile, because if she stops smiling, the simulation might just break. Step out of the cold, monotonous loop of the market and push through the heavy doors of the Bannered Mare once again. We have been here before, but this time I want you to look at the dynamic between the two women standing behind the counter. On the left, scrubbing a tankard with the weariness of a woman who has heard every drunkard story in Whiterun, is Hulda. On the right, or perhaps sitting nearby watching with hawk-like intensity, is Ysolda. To the casual observer, this looks like a mentorship. It looks like a kind, older woman teaching a bright young go-getter the ropes of the hospitality business. But if you listen closely to the dialogue, and if you understand the cruel, unyielding mechanics of the Skyrim engine, you realise you're witnessing a macabre death watch. The core in-game fact that drives this section is a line of dialogue that Hulda repeats often. "I've been thinking about selling the inn to Ysolda. She has a good head for business, that one. It sounds promising, doesn't it? It sounds like a plan. It sounds like retirement is just around the corner. But here is the tragic reality. In the vanilla game, without mods or console commands, Hulda never retires. She never sells the inn. She stands there, day after day, year after year, scrubbing that same tankard, talking about a future that the game code literally does not allow her to reach. For Ysolda, this promise is a torture device. She has likely saved the gold. She has learned the trade. She is ready. But the transaction is perpetually frozen in a state of soon. She is stuck in a waiting game where the only winning move is for her mentor to die. This changes the nature of Ysolda's gaze. When she looks at Hulda, she isn't just seeing a friend, she is seeing an obstacle. She is watching for signs of weakness. Is Hulda coughing more today? Is she moving slower? Does she look pale? Every sign of vitality in Hulda is a delay to Ysolda's dream. Every sign of frailty is a spark of hope. Imagine the guilt that must fester in Ysolda's heart. The dark, secret wish that the woman who took her under her wing would just hurry up and pass on so Ysolda's life can finally begin. It creates a relationship defined by affectionate predation. Ysolda loves Hulda, surely. Hulda gave her a chance when no one else would. But ambition is a corrosive acid. It eats through sentiment. Ysolda knows that there is only one throne in the Bannered Mare, and currently it is occupied. She is the Prince Charles of Whiterun, aging in the shadow of a monarch who refuses to abdicate. Let's dive into the obscure lore tidbit regarding the heir system in the creation kit. In the game files, every shopkeeper has a designated backup. If Belethor dies, Ysolda takes over. If Hulda dies, Ysolda takes over. Ysolda is the universal spare tire of the Whiterun economy. But for the Bannered Mare specifically, the transition is seamless. There is no quest to buy the deed. There is no legal battle. If Hulda takes an arrow to the throat during a vampire raid, Ysolda steps behind the counter the very next morning. This mechanic implies a grim pragmatism. Ysolda doesn't mourn. She doesn't close the inn for a week out of respect. She puts on the apron and opens for business. The continuity of commerce is more important than the grief of loss. This suggests that Ysolda has mentally rehearsed this transition 1,000 times. She knows exactly where the keys are. She knows exactly how to light the hearth. She's so prepared for Hulda's death that when it happens, she doesn't miss a beat. It's almost robotic. The community has spiraled this into a dark fan theory. Is Ysolda actively accelerating the process? We know she has access to poisons via the Khajiit. We know she deals in Sleeping Tree Sap, a substance with unknown long-term effects. Some players speculate that Ysolda might be slowly poisoning Hulda. A drop of nightshade in her mead here, a little extra moon sugar there. It would explain why Hulda is always thinking of retiring. Perhaps she feels tired, weak, drained of energy. If this theory holds water, Ysolda transforms from a tragic figure into a calculated villain. She is the angel of death in the scullery. She smiles. She helps Hulda with the heavy lifting, all while slowly tightening the noose. It adds a terrifying subtext to her line. I've got a little money. I've been saving. Saving for what? The inn, or the antidote she never intends to administer. Even if we reject the murder theory and stick to the natural causes narrative, The environment of the Bannered Mare is conducive to a slow death. It is filled with smoke. It serves heavy, fatty foods. Violence breaks out regularly. Sadia draws the attention of Alika assassins. Samgaven brings Daedric chaos. The inn is a dangerous place. Ysolda is betting against the house. She's playing the odds that eventually the violence of Skyrim will catch up with Hulda, and she will be there to catch the keys when they fall. Consider the layout of the inn. Hulda's room is upstairs. Ysolda doesn't live there yet. She lives in her small house. Every night she has to leave the warmth of the fire and go back to her cold, empty home, knowing that the inn still belongs to someone else. The walk home is the walk of the defeated. She leaves the centre of power and returns to the periphery. There is also the matter of Mikael, the bard. Hulda seems to tolerate him. In fact, she protects him from the Dragonborn during his quest. Ysolda's relationship with him is less defined, but if she takes over, does she keep him? Or does she finally fire the man who's been singing Ragnar the Red for 5 years straight? The waiting game isn't just about the building, it's about control over the culture. Ysolda wants to curate the atmosphere. As long as Hulda lives, Ysolda has to endure Hulda's taste in music, Hulda's menu, Hulda's rules. The tragedy here is the lack of a retirement home in Skyrim. In our world, an old business owner sells up and moves to Florida. In Tamriel, you work until you drop. There is no Honor Hall orphanage for the elderly. So, Hulda's retirement is a euphemism for the grave. Ysolda knows this. Hulda knows this. They're dancing around the subject of death every time they discuss the deed. When I sell the inn actually means when I am in the Hall of the Dead. This reality creates a barrier to true intimacy. Can you fully trust the person who stands to inherit everything you own? Can Hulda truly confide in Ysolda, knowing that Ysolda is structurally incentivized to see her fail? There is a wall of polite silence between them. They talk about stock, about mead barrels, about the firewood, but they never talk about the elephant in the room, the fact that for one to rise, the other must fall. And what happens if the Dragonborn intervenes? Many players, knowing the mechanic, decide to help Ysolda. They slip into the inn at night. They cast a frenzy spell on Hulda, or they simply murder her in her sleep. When the Dragonborn walks in the next day and sees Ysolda behind the counter, does she know? Does she suspect that her spouse or her friend committed murder to give her this gift? If she does suspect, she never says it. She accepts the blood-soaked gift. "Welcome to the Bannered Mare," she chirps, standing on the spot where Hulda died. This complicity is the darkest stain on her soul. She accepts the fruits of violence because she wanted them so badly. She becomes an accessory after the fact to the murder of her mentor. The mortality and the waiting game is a reflection of the stagnation of the world. In a game where time doesn't really pass, where children never grow up and old people never die of natural causes, ambition is a trap. Ysolda is fighting against the static nature of the simulation. She's trying to force a dynamic change in a world designed to remain frozen. So when you see them together, notice the spacing. Ysolda is always close, but not too close. She is hovering. She is the shadow cast by Hulda's light. She is learning the business not just to run it, but to replace it. "It's a fine day with you around," she says, "but it will be a much finer day when she is the one holding the ladle, and Hulda is just a name on a tombstone in the Hall of the Dead." It is a harsh, brutal waiting game, and Ysolda has the patience of a stone. The market square of Whiterun is a theatre. The actors, Nazim, Heimska, Brenuin, the guards, play their parts loudly and predictably. But the most important performance is the one that happens in silence. It is the performance of looking away. Ysolda is the grand master of this art. We have discussed her active crimes, the drugs, the poaching, but now we must confront a more subtle, pervasive sin, the sin of silent complicity. In a city tearing itself apart at the seams, silence is not neutral. It is an endorsement of the status quo. The core in-game fact here is Ysolda's staunch refusal to engage with the political or moral crises of her neighbours. While the Battleborns and Greymanes are effectively engaging in a Cold War that spills over into kidnappings and street brawls, Ysolda maintains a business-first diplomacy. She trades with both. She smiles at both. "I don't really concern myself with the war," she might say. "I'm just trying to make a living." It sounds reasonable, it sounds pragmatic, but scratch the surface. This neutrality requires her to witness atrocities and say absolutely nothing. Take the case of Thorold Greymane. Everyone in the market knows something happened. The whispers are there. Fralia Greymane, who stands 20 feet from Ysolda, is weeping over her missing son. She claims the Battleborns have him. She claims he's being tortured by the Thalmor at Northwatch Keep. Does Ysolda comfort Fralia? Does she use her connections with the Khajiit, who know the roads better than anyone, to find out the truth? No. She stands at her spot, arranging her imaginary inventory. To acknowledge Fralia's pain would be to alienate the Battleborns, who are the wealthy patrons of the city. Ulfrid Battleborn, the Patriarch, is a powerful man with the Jarl's ear, and eventually the Thieves' Guild's backing. Ysolda cannot afford to anger Ulfrid, so she ignores Fralia's tears. She treats the abduction of a neighbour's son as a political issue rather than a human tragedy. It is a chilling compartmentalisation. Then there are the Aleka warriors. When they first arrive, they are menacing. They harass women on the road. They are hunting Sadia, a woman who works in the very inn Ysolda covets. Ysolda spends half her life in the Bannered Mare. She knows Sadia. She has likely laughed with her, perhaps even confided in her during quiet moments. Yet, when the Aleka come knocking, asking for a Redguard woman, does Ysolda stand up for her colleague? There is no dialogue option for it. There is no scene where Ysolda hides Sadia. She steps back. She lets the Dragonborn decide. If you sell Sadia out, leading to her paralysis and capture, Ysolda doesn't bat an eye. The next night, she's back in the inn, stepping over the spot where Sadia was dragged away, focused only on whether Hulda is ready to sell the deed. This behaviour highlights a profound moral vacuum. Ysolda views people not as community members, but as variables in a risk assessment algorithm. Sadia is a liability. Fralia is a liability. The Aleka are potential customers. The Thalmor are complicated. Let's touch on the Thalmor. They are the boogeymen of Skyrim, the elven supremacists dragging people out of their homes for worshipping Talos. We see justiciars patrolling the roads with prisoners in tow. We know they have a presence in the Jarl's palace, if the Imperials are in charge, or at least spy networks. There is an obscure lore detail found in the Thalmor dossiers recovered during the main quest. The Thalmor keep tabs on everyone of influence. Ysolda, as a rising merchant with illegal connections, would certainly be on their radar. Why haven't they cracked down on her? She deals in Sleeping Tree Sap, Daedric influence. She associates with Khajiit, who are technically under the Dominion's sway in Elsewhere, but the caravans in Skyrim are often renegades. A popular community debate suggests that Ysolda might be paying protection money, not just to the guards, but to the darker powers that be. Or, even worse, her silence is her payment. She sees the justiciars take a prisoner. She sees them drag a Nord screaming through the gates, and she turns her head. She inspects a cabbage. She signals to the Thalmor, "I saw nothing. I am not a threat. Let me sell my wares, and you can take whom you please. This complicity extends to the corruption of the city guards. We all know the Whiterun guards are flexible. Wait, I know you, they say, before accepting a pathetic bribe to look the other way on a murder charge. Ysolda operates a drug ring under their noses. This implies she is an active participant in the bribery ecosystem. She is feeding the corruption that rots the city from the inside. Every septum she slides to a guard to ignore Ulag's replacement runner is a septum that empowers that guard to mistreat someone else. She is funding the erosion of law and order to protect her profit margins. Consider the Thieves' Guild influence. If the Dragonborn restores the guild to its former glory, they gain a foothold in Whiterun. Malus Machias runs the Honningbrew Meadery as a front. Ysolda, with her keen eye for the black market, would instantly recognise the guild's marks, the shadow marks carved into door frames. She knows who the fences are. She knows which houses are protected. By operating alongside this criminal element without opposing it, she effectively becomes an associate. She benefits from the chaos the guild creates because distracted guards catch fewer smugglers. The tragedy of this weight of silence is that Ysolda probably believes she's a good person. She's polite. She's ambitious. She isn't violent. But in a world of absolute moral absolutes, Empire versus Stormcloak, man versus dragon, living versus undead, her grey morality is a poison. She's the banal evil of the bystander. She's the citizen who keeps the shop open while the ghetto is liquidated. Look at her interactions with Nazim. He is universally hated. He belittles everyone. Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Yet Ysolda never snaps at him. Why? Because Nazim owns Chillfurrow Farm. He is a supplier. He has money. If she alienates him, she loses a potential investor for the inn. So she swallows her pride. She smiles at the tyrant of the turnip fields. She validates his arrogance with her submission. It creates a feedback loop where the worst people in Whiterun feel comfortable because the nice people like Ysolda never challenge them. There is also a fan theory that Isolda's neutrality is actually a form of accelerationism. By not helping the Stormcloaks or the Empire, she ensures the war drags on. And war, as we've discussed, is good for the scarcity business. If the war ends, trade routes open up, prices drop. The East Empire Company floods the market with cheap goods. Ysolda needs the chaos. She needs the roads to be dangerous so that her exclusive smuggled goods remain valuable. Her silence isn't just cowardice, it's a strategic decision to keep the market volatile. This complicity isolates her from the true heroes of the city. The companions fight for honour. Vignar fights for tradition. Balgruuf fights for his people. Ysolda fights for Ysolda. When the history books of the Fourth Era are written, her name won't be in them. She won't be listed among the defenders or the conquerors. She will be the invisible statistic, the merchant who kept the gold flowing while the world burned. And deep down she must feel the weight of it. You can see it in the way she hesitates sometimes before speaking, the way she lingers in the Bannered Mare drinking a little too much mead. It's the guilt of the survivor who knows they survived by selling out their conscience. She looks at the empty chair where Severio Pelagia used to sit, or the spot where Ulag died, or the road where Syadia was taken, and she feels the ghosts of her silence gathering around her. But then, the bell rings. A customer approaches, a guard walks by, and the mask slams back into place. "It's a fine day with you around," she says. The transaction is completed. The coin enters the purse. The conscience is silenced by the jingle of gold. She has decided that in Skyrim you can be good, or you can be rich. but you very rarely get to be both. And Ysolda made her choice a long time ago. This silence of complicity we just discussed is heavy, but it is not quiet. In Ysolda's mind it is deafening. It is accompanied by the constant thumping heartbeat of paranoia. We've looked at her ambition, her sorrow and her moral compromises, but now we must examine the price she pays for them, the absolute unwavering terror that she will be caught. Consider the geography of Whiterun again. It is a vertical hierarchy. At the bottom, the Plains District, the market, the mud, the common folk. At the top, looming over everything like a stone titan, is Dragon's Reach, the Cloud District. To Nazim, the Cloud District is a VIP club. To Ysolda, it is the Panopticon. The Jarl sits up there on his throne. The court wizard, Farengar, peers into the arcane, and beneath them, carved into the cold rock of the mountain, is the Dragon's Reach dungeon. Ysolda knows exactly what happens in that dungeon. She knows about the damp cells, the single bedroll, and the prisoner's belongings chest where your life is confiscated. Every time she looks up at the palace, she doesn't see majesty. She sees the courthouse and the jail. A core in-game fact that drives this anxiety is the note she wrote to Ularg, the one we found on his corpse. I can't risk the guards catching me with it. That isn't just flavour text. It is a confession. It is physical evidence of a crime. Think about the journey of that note. Ularg had it. Ularg died. The note is now likely in the Dragonborn's inventory. You're walking around with a paper trail that could put Ysolda behind bars for a very long time. Does she know you have it? Does she lie awake at night wondering if you read it? Or worse, does she wonder if you dropped it somewhere? Maybe you sold it to Belethor by accident. Maybe you dropped it in the street when sorting your inventory. A single piece of paper blowing in the wind across the market could end her entire life. This paranoia transforms her daily routine into a high-stakes stealth mission. Every interaction with a guard is a roll of the dice. Commander Chaos, the captain of the guard, patrols the city. He's a stern man, tired, likely underpaid, and dealing with a civil war. If he decided to toss Ysolda's stall, or rather her pockets, what would he find? A vial of Sleeping Tree Sap, a ring stolen from a noble house, the keys to a dead rival's house. Ysolda has to project an aura of such intense normalcy that it becomes a camouflage. She has to be too boring to search. She has to be the nice lady who likes mammoths, not the drug kingpin of the tundra. It is performance that requires constant vigilance. If she stutters, if she sweats, if she looks at a guard the wrong way, the suspicion starts. And in Skyrim, justice is swift. There are no lawyers, there are no appeals. There is a bounty, a confrontation, and a choice. Pay the gold, go to jail, or resist arrest and die. There is an obscure lore tidbit regarding the legal system of Whiterun found in the legal codes of the Jarls. Crimes involving controlled substances like skooma and high-grade narcotics are treated with severity, often involving exile or heavy fines that would bankrupt a small merchant. If Ysolda is caught, she doesn't just lose her freedom, she loses the dream. The Bannered Mare plan evaporates. She becomes a beggar, or worse, a prisoner in the chill of Winterhold if she tries to flee north. This fear colours her relationship with the Thieves' Guild even further. We discussed her complicity, but let's discuss her vulnerability. If the guild operates in Whiterun, they know about her. Maven Blackbriar in Riften certainly knows about the Sleeping Tree Sap trade. Maven knows everything illegal in Skyrim. This means Ysolda is likely operating under a shadow tax. She might be paying protection money to keep the guild from ratting her out to the commander. She's being squeezed from both sides, the law above her in the Cloud District, and the criminal underworld below her in the sewers. Community debates often focus on why Ysolda is non-essential, meaning she can be killed, while other merchants are essential. The prevailing theory is that she is expendable to the game's narrative because she lives a dangerous life. She has placed herself in the line of fire. If a vampire attacks, she dies. If a dragon attacks, she dies. But the darker interpretation is that her non-essential status reflects her fragility in the lore. She has no plot armor. She's walking a tightrope without a net. If she slips, the game, and the world, doesn't care. Imagine the sensory details of her paranoia. The sound of iron boots on stone. Clank, clank, clank. To you, it's just a guard walking by. To Ysolda, it's the sound of judgment coming for her. When a shadow passes over her face, does she flinch, thinking it's a dragon? Or does she freeze, thinking it's a hand reaching out to arrest her? This puts Nazim's taunt in a horrifying new light. Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Oh, what am I saying? Of course you don't. He means it as a class insult, but Ysolda might hear it as a threat. Do you go to the place where the Jarl judges criminals? She avoids the Cloud District not just because she isn't welcome, but because she's terrified of being noticed by the people in charge. She stays in the Plains District, in the crowd, where she can blend in. The Cloud District is too exposed. There is nowhere to hide up there. And then there is the Dragonborn's role as the Thane. You are the ultimate legal authority in the hold, second only to the Jarl. You have the power to tell the guards to stand down. Ysolda's friendship with you, her marriage to you, is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. This reinforces the idea that her affection is strategic. She needs a Thane in her corner. If Commander Caius comes for her, she needs to be able to say, "My husband is the Dragonborn. Do you really want to do this?" But what if you aren't there? What if you're in Solstheim? The paranoia must spike when you leave. She loses her shield. She's vulnerable again. Every day you are gone is a day she holds her breath. Let's also consider the face sculptor theory. In the Dawnguard expansion, we meet Galadhil in the Ragged Flagon, who can change your appearance. Some fans speculate that Ysolda, with her deep connections to the underworld, has this as a plan B. If the heat gets too hot, if the guards find the sap, she grabs her gold, runs to the Ratway, gets a new face, and disappears into the population of Solitude or Windhelm. It's a desperate fantasy, but for someone living in fear, having an escape hatch, even a gruesome, magical one, is a comfort. The paranoia in the Cloud District is the internal rot that eats away at her pleasant demeanour. It's why she never truly relaxes. Even in the Bannered Mare, surrounded by noise and drink, she's watching the door. She's checking the exits. She's wondering if today is the day the House of Cards collapses. There is a specific interaction where, if you drop a weapon or an item in the market, Ysolda might ask if she can have it. "Are you going to throw that away?" she asks. It seems greedy, but look at it through the lens of fear. She is scavenging for defense. She is scavenging for resources to sell quickly if she needs to run. She is hoarding assets because she knows her position is precarious. And the Sleeping Tree Sap itself, it's glowing. It's loud, visually speaking. Hiding that in a medieval house is hard. Does she bury it in the garden? Does she hide it in a hollowed-out book? The physical act of hiding the contraband is a daily ritual of terror. She has to move it, check it, ensure it hasn't leaked. She's the custodian of her own evidence locker. Ultimately, this section reveals that Ysolda is not living the cozy life of a fantasy merchant. She's living the high-stress life of a career criminal who hasn't been caught yet. She's waiting for the other shoe to drop. She looks up at Dragon's Reach, at the dark windows of the dungeon, and she shudders. Not because of the cold wind coming off the mountain, but because she can almost feel the damp stone walls closing in around her. She's a prisoner on parole, but the parole officer is a dragon-slaying demigod, and the judge is a Jarl who is losing his mind. It is a precarious, terrifying existence, masked by a smile and a basket of flowers. And so, we arrive at the end of the ledger. We have traced Ysolda's journey from the mud of the market to the illicit dealings of the Sleeping Tree camp, through the fires of the siege and the cold isolation of a marriage to a demigod. Now, we must look at the final line item, the profit. Let's fast forward to the end game. Imagine a save file with 300 hours on it. You, the Dragonborn, are level 81. You're clad in armour made of dragon bones and Daedric hearts. You have shouted Alduin out of existence, and Ysolda, if you married her, or if you invested in her business using the speech perk, she is rich. This is a core in-game fact. Ysolda is one of the best merchants to invest in. With the Master Trader perk, her available gold skyrockets. She transforms from the desperate girl begging for a tusk into a financial powerhouse, with thousands of septims in her register. She has achieved her goal. She has the liquidity. She has the capital. In the strictly economic simulation of Skyrim, she has won. But look at what that victory actually looks like. She stands in the exact same spot. She wears the exact same clothes, a simple green or blue dress that offers zero protection and certainly doesn't scream wealthy matriarch. She lives in the same small house or the same dusty room in your mansion. The tragedy of her success is that the world offers her nothing to spend her money on. There is no high society update for Whiterun. There are no grand balls at the Blue Palace for her to attend. She cannot buy a new wardrobe from the Radiant Raiment in Solitude because her script keeps her locked in Whiterun. She cannot hire guards to protect her. She cannot commission a statue of herself. She is King Midas in a cage, surrounded by gold that has no utility beyond being counted. This realization brings a crushing sense of futility to her entire arc. All that hustle, all that risk, all the moral compromises with the drug trade and the poachers, for what? To see a number go up in a menu? She has traded her soul for a high score that no one else can see. She's the wealthiest woman in the Plains District, yet she still has to walk through the mud to get to the inn. She still has to listen to Nazim. The gold didn't buy her freedom, it just bought her a heavier purse to carry. Now, let's walk to the one place in Whiterun that Ysolda rarely visits, but where she will inevitably end up, the Hall of the Dead. If you head past the Gildergreen and go down the small stairs near the Temple of Kinnereth, you enter the resting place of the city's citizens. It is a grim, claustrophobic space. It isn't a grand mausoleum like the Nordic ruins you explore. It's a basement. It's dusty. It smells of dry bone and stale incense, and it is overseen by Anders, a priest of Archay who is more concerned with losing his amulet than the sanctity of the dead. Here lies the obscure lore reality of Skyrim's burial rites. Nords generally cremate their dead, or inter them in linen wrappings. In the Hall of the Dead, you see rows of stone coffins and small ceramic urns. If an NPC dies, if Ysolda were to be caught in a vampire raid tomorrow, this is where she ends up. Her coffin appears here. Go look at those urns. They are identical. There is no gold filigree for the wealthy. There is no obsidian carving for the successful. The urn of a beggar looks exactly the same as the urn of a merchant prince. Ysolda's final resting place is a generic container, indistinguishable from the ones used for the very people she looked down upon. Death is the great equalizer, and in Skyrim's engine, it is brutally efficient. This leads to a somber reflection on legacy. In the Elder Scrolls universe, history is written by the heroes. It is written by the Dragonborns, the Nerevarines, the Conquerors. It is written in the blood of gods and the ink of Elder Scrolls. It is not written in ledgers. No bard sings of the merchant who balanced the books. No saga is told about the woman who managed the Bannered Mare for 40 years. Ysolda is destined to be forgotten, completely. 2 generations after she dies, who will remember her? Her children. If she has them, they will likely be adventurers or farmers, consumed by their own struggles. The patrons of the inn? They will drink to the new owner. The Khajiit caravans? They move on. Their memory is as shifting as the sands of elsewhere. Ysolda leaves no monument. She leaves no dynasty. She leaves a pile of gold coins that will be looted by the next passing adventurer or absorbed by the Jarl's taxes. There is a fan theory, or perhaps a community observation, that touches on the NPC nihilism we mentioned earlier. Some players suggest that Ysolda's obsession with material wealth is a distraction from this terrifying truth. She fills her life with things, tusks, sap, rings, deeds, to avoid facing the void of her own insignificance. She's trying to build a wall of commerce to keep the existential dread at bay. If she keeps moving, if she keeps selling, she doesn't have to think about the fact that she is a minor character in someone else's story. Contrast her fate with yours. You, the Dragonborn, have a place in Sovngarde. You are sung about in the halls of Shore. You have shout walls dedicated to you. Ysolda doesn't get Sovngarde. She isn't a warrior. She doesn't die in glorious combat. She dies of old age, or sickness, or a random accident. She goes to the Dreamsleave, the recycling mechanism of souls to be scrubbed clean and reused. Her identity, her hustle, her smile, it all dissolves. The visual of the empty grave is symbolic. Even if she has a coffin, it is empty of meaning. It contains bones, but it doesn't contain the essence of who she was. The spark of ambition that drove her to negotiate with orcs and hide from guards is extinguished, leaving nothing behind but a few inventory items. Think about the ring again, the wedding ring from A Night to Remember. She bought it back. She kept it. Maybe she is buried with it. A symbol of a love that was a joke, a marriage that was a mechanic, and a life that was a transaction. It sits in the dark with her, a circle of gold in the dust representing the cycle she never broke. And what of the Sleeping Tree Sap? That purple glowing narcotic. It persists. The tree keeps growing. The drug keeps flowing. The addiction she helped foster outlives her. Her negative impact on the world, the addiction, the poaching, has a longer half-life than her positive contributions. That is the cruelest math of all. The damage we do often echoes longer than the goods we sell. As the years pass in Skyrim, the snow will continue to fall on Whiterun. The wind will strip the paint from Ysolda's house. The Bannered Mare will eventually rot or burn. The market will change. New merchants will arrive, hungry and young, standing in the exact same spot where she stood, making the exact same desperate pleas to passing adventurers. "It's a fine day with you around," they will say, unaware that they are quoting a ghost. Ysolda becomes a cautionary tale for the player. She represents the trap of the grind. We grind for gear, she grinds for gold. But in the end, when the screen fades to black, none of it comes with us. She is the mirror showing us the emptiness of accumulation without purpose. She conquered the market, but she lost the war against time. So the next time you walk past her in the market, don't just see the quest giver. See the tragedy of the golden cage. See the woman who won the game of capitalism only to realize there was no prize at the end. She stands there, wealthy and hollow, clutching a basket of nothing, waiting for a sunset that will eventually bring a darkness she cannot bribe her way out of. She is Ysolda of Whiterun, the queen of small things, ruling over a kingdom of dust. And so the ledger is closed. The final coin has been counted, the last transaction recorded, and the book is shut tight against a coming night. The hustle of the market fades away, replaced by the soft, rhythmic breathing of the sleeping city. Let the image of Whiterun dissolve in your mind. The harsh winds of the tundra soften into a gentle breeze that rustles the leaves of the gildergreen. The fires in the Bannered Mare have burned down to glowing embers, casting a warm, flickering orange light across the empty tables. The bards have stopped singing. The arguments of the Battleborns and Greymanes have ceased. Even Heimskr is silent now, resting his voice for another day. There is a peace in this silence, a sense that for a few hours at least the struggle is over. Ysolda is safe in her home, the worries of the day set aside. The dragons are far away, sleeping on their mountain tops. The Draugr are still in their crypts. The world is paused, suspended in this quiet, safe moment between the chaos of the past and the uncertainty of the future. You can let go of the tension now. You don't need to carry the weight of the dragon bones or the fate of the Empire or the secrets of the black market. You're just a traveller, resting by the fire, listening to the wind outside. The story is told, the journey is done. The dark truths are hidden away in the dark, and here in the light there is only rest. Let your breathing slow down, match the cadence of the sleeping world, in and out, heavy and slow. The market will open again tomorrow, but for now the stalls are empty, the streets are quiet, and the night is yours. Sweet dreams,